I hereby call to order are we getting the PA over the,
I believe so.
can you hear the meeting? Okay. I didn't hear it coming back to me, so I wasn't sure. The last thing I want is nobody being able to hear me.
We can get you a monitor. Hear you.
Anyway, calling to order the Roseville City Council meeting for Monday, January 8th, 2024. Now I can hear it. Mr. City Manager, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Etten.
Present.
Councilmember Schroeder.
Here.
Councilmember Graff.
Here.
Councilmember Strawn.
Here.
Mayor Rowe.
Here. And with us at the dais, we have our city attorney, Rachel Tierney, who's on my right at the end of the dais, and our city manager, Pat Trudgeon, who's on my left at the other end of the dais. We have other staff, department heads, and guests who will be participating in the meeting as the various agenda items come forward, and they'll be introduced at that time. We would ask everyone who has a cell phone to be sure to silence it, or otherwise assure that it doesn't disrupt the meeting unexpectedly. And with that, we'll ask folks to stand if they're able for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, that brings us then to our first agenda item, which is consideration of tonight's agenda. And I'll check, as I always do, first with staff to see if there are any items that need to be removed from the consent agenda, or excuse me, any changes that need to be made from a staff perspective on the agenda this evening.
Mr. Mayor, there's no changes to the agenda from staff.
All right. And I'll check with council members. Council members, any changes to the agenda this evening or items to remove from consent for separate consideration? Does not appear to be the case. We'll double check with members of the public to see if anyone is here on an item in Section 10 of tonight's agenda. Section 10 begins at the bottom of page 1 and continues on to page 2. There are a number of items there that are usually fairly administrative, but in case somebody's here on one of those items that wants to speak or ask a question, we always do check at the start of the meeting just to make sure if somebody is here for that item, we take it off the consent and move it earlier in the meeting to take it up when people are here. Is there anyone here for an item in Section 10 of tonight's agenda this evening? Does not appear to be the case. With no changes proposed to the agenda then, is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by a council member. I've got to remember all your names again. Councilmember Schroeder, seconded by Councilmember Graff. We've been off for a while. Is there any discussion on that motion?
No.
Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. We have our agenda for this evening. Next on our agenda is general public comment. This is an opportunity for members of the public to speak to items that are not on this evening's agenda, but may be of interest to people in the community or related to city business. We will provide an opportunity for public comment as various agenda items come up, but we do want to provide a general opportunity at the start of each meeting. Is there anyone here this evening to speak on general topics during public comment this evening? Does not appear to be the case. So we'll proceed then with our agenda. The first items we have to take up are a couple of recognitions and donations type items. In that section of the agenda, item 5A is a proclamation related to Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And I will get a copy of the proclamation here to read, and then a motion from the council to approve would be in order. The proclamation reads, whereas the city of Roseville recognizes and honors the work of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and whereas the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was the chief spokesperson for nonviolent activism in the civil rights movement, which successfully protested racial discrimination in federal and state law, and whereas the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Was jailed and arrested numerous times for speaking out against racism and discrimination and for trying to help African Americans to register to vote, among other things, and whereas the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in December of 1964, and whereas the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated on April 4th, 1968 because of his fight for racial equality and civil rights for all, and whereas an act of Congress of the United States in 1983 declared the third Monday in January to officially honor the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and whereas Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? And whereas each year Americans across the country answer that question by coming together on Martin Luther King Day to serve their neighborhoods and communities, now therefore be it resolved, the City of Roseville hereby declare January 15th, 2024, be Martin Luther King Jr. Day in the City of Roseville, and we urge all citizens to join together to honor Dr. King by committing to volunteering for the community.
So moved.
It's been moved by Councilmember Strawn, seconded by Councilmember Etten to approve that proclamation. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. The second proclamation this evening relates to Human Trafficking Awareness and Prevention Month, and that proclamation reads as follows. Whereas human trafficking is a nationwide public health and civil rights crisis, its victims and survivors are everywhere, with Roseville being no exception. And whereas human trafficking includes both labor and sex trafficking with both international and domestic victims, and whereas anyone can become a victim of trafficking, while women and girls are the primary victims, victims and survivors come from every background, race, gender, sexual orientation, and economic status. Traffickers target individuals who, for any reason, are vulnerable. And whereas young people are particularly vulnerable to trafficking and exploitation, but face many barriers in reporting what has happened to them, Minnesota's Safe Harbor law recognizes that any youth under the age of 18 who comes forward will no longer face criminal prosecution and will instead receive comprehensive and trauma-informed services. Safe Harbor also seeks to provide communities across Minnesota with the knowledge, skills, and resources to effectively identify and work with sexually exploited and at-risk youth. And whereas all communities must seek to prevent human trafficking before it can occur by promoting safe, healthy, and supportive environments for their people, and whereas the city of Roseville is striving to become a place where human trafficking does not exist, where people have opportunities available to them, and where all people are treated as fully human and worthy of supportive community and freedom. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the city of Roseville hereby declares January as Human Trafficking Awareness and Prevention Month.
So moved.
Second.
Right. Moved by Councilmember Schroeder, seconded by Councilmember Groff. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. That proclamation is also approved. That then brings us to our business items this evening. Our first item under business items is item 7A, which is to consider a request to amend City Code Chapter 304 as it relates to lawful gambling, and I'll turn it over to our City Manager, Pat Trudgeon, to introduce this item for us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As referenced in the case on November 27th, the City Council did have a discussion based off a request by Roseville Area Youth Hockey Association to amend the chapter that governs lawful gambling, Chapter 304, that would allow local nonprofits to have up to 5 separate locations within the city limits to conduct lawful gambling activities. Currently, the code only allows for up to 3. We have a total of 12 licenses possible under our ordinance. The council did discuss, and I should mention there are 8 existing licenses being used, so there's 4 extra ones that are being unused at this point. The council did have a long discussion on it and felt that going to 5 in one step maybe was a little bit too far, a little bit more comfortable. At least the consensus was to going from 3 to 4, but they also wanted to take a look at other changes to the ordinance that would allow for a greater number than 4. So in your packet tonight are 2 ordinances. One is a simple change of 30402 to change the number for any one entity to have up to 4 instead of 3. Just a simple change of striking the number 3 to 4. There's also a second ordinance that's much more extensive that really is based off some ideas that the mayor had about 50% threshold, and the city attorney did take that and drafted that. There's language in 304.02B of that second ordinance that talks about no one entity can have more than 50% of the total amount of licenses that are issued. There's also some other cleanup in there just to clean up the language, and I'll defer to the city attorney if you have any specific questions on that. Both ordinances were published on our website, so they are eligible for adoption. I know going from 3 to 4 is a very simple ordinance, and you may want to consider that, but in case you did want to consider approving that 50% threshold ordinance, you would pass that ordinance instead. That would remove any particular set number in the ordinance. It would just be, couldn't be more than 50% of the number of licenses than are currently issued. So that's the background. I know a representative from Youth Hockey Association is here as well if you have any particular questions, but I'll stand for any questions and defer to the city attorney when I need to.
All right, thank you, Mr. Trudgeon. And just to clarify, in the more extensive changes, I noted that a lot of updates were made to our language to not say licenses in the city, but actually premises permits. And so maybe just for clarification purposes, that's kind of what we're talking about is the premises permits, which is what the city has control over.
Correct.
And you're not saying that the proposal in the more extensive ordinance is to eliminate the cap of 12
Correct.
12 entities that can have premises permits, but rather to deal with the limit on the number of premises that any one organization can have charitable gambling at in the city of Roseville, of those potentially 12.
Yes, that's correct. We are not changing the maximum cap of 12. on
Right,
that.
and actually, that's the case of the shorter, simpler ordinance
Correct.
proposed as well, is just to change the cap per organization from 3 to 4. All right. Questions from the council for staff? Councilmember Groff?
So then to clarify that again, when you're talking about, if we looked at the 50%, does that mean 50% of those that are, like, right now there are 8, so that 50% would be 4. It does not mean 50% of the 12.
That's
That are
the way
possible.
it's written right now, is
Okay.
that it would be 50% of however many there are, or I suppose potentially would be if another premises was associated with an organization that was going to come in with a new premises permit. That would change from 8 to 9, for instance, and then the 50% threshold would move to 4.5.
Which doesn't work, but.
So you couldn't have more than 4.5, which would be a limit of 4, essentially. Does that help clarify?
Yes, perfect.
Can you just clarify the premises? Are you meaning like the bingo hall has 2?
So, and I'll defer to the attorney if I get this wrong, but as I believe it's set up, is that there's 2 sort of things happening with this regulation. One is the number of places that can have a permit to do charitable gambling. And then we also, as a city, have a limit on the number of places at which one organization can be associated with the charitable gambling. And so the premise permit is the first one, which is what we have the cap of 12 on. And then the organizational limit is the second number, which is currently at 3, potentially proposed to go to 4, or the 50% threshold of the in-place premises permits.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Other questions? I would ask the representative of the Roseville Youth Hockey if there's anything they are concerned about with the proposed language or any preferences they have. This would be your opportunity to speak to that. If you don't have any, that's okay too, but here's your opportunity.
No, like you said, we're
And-
just grateful that we're even being looked at here for an option.
Grateful for consideration, no preference between the proposals, it sounds like,
Well,
other than as many as possible.
yeah. 50 would be great, but
Right.
I'm just here to see what the people vote.
Right, because I know there was a request to maybe make it even up to 5
Yep.
instead of 3 for one organization, so
And the 5 would fall into that 50.
depending on how many premises are out there, exactly,
Okay.
yes. So we're having a little back and forth here for folks at home. The point was that because of the 50% approach, if there were up to those 12 premises, then theoretically one organization could have 6 of those working with that single organization under the way it's written, so, and that's satisfactory to this particular requesting organization.
However,
Councilmember
at present, the most they would have under either arrangement would be 4.
Correct.
That is correct.
Okay, just for
Yeah,
clarification.
because the current number of premises permits out there is the 8. Councilmember Schroeder.
I do like that 50% piece. I think that makes sense, because then no matter if the number that we allow going up or down, that automatically takes care of that piece as well. So I do like that wording.
I think one of the benefits of it certainly is that it doesn't require the council to amend the ordinance every time we want to change the number necessarily. So-
That's pretty much what I was thinking too, is that with that, we don't have to come back if we do go up to 10 and then say, okay, now we can do 5.
Right.
Gives us flexibility.
Councilmember
I
Sherman.
would prefer the first, just because I think it's good to keep it
Excuse me.
knowing, like a closer handle on it, that we have, okay, we're gonna give 4 to this organization. If somehow a new organization came in with enough administrative power to be able to have more than one, they were able to bring in a few different locations. I think there aren't just a bunch of locations just waiting to be had, or it would have happened by now. But if that were to change, I feel like 4, yes, we'd have to check into it again, but 6 potential is a lot more than 3, and I guess that is pretty kind of a monopoly on the city as far as who can have access to that, so I would prefer the other option.
All right, probably appropriate at this time to ask for a motion from the council to, Councilmember Atten.
I could make a motion, I suppose, but I would just note that I understand that, I appreciate that 6 out of 12 would seem like a lot, but as it stands right now, they can only have 3 until they get the next one formally. We really only have 7 premise permits out there. And so that's going to bring us to 8. Before they could have another one, we'd have to have 2 other outside organizations add before they could add a 5th location. And at that point, you know, someone could have a robust start if they're looking at that. So I'm comfortable with the mayor's language, and I will move that.
And just to be clear, it's the city attorney's language.
The city attorney's language.
improving
because She
upon-
is so much smarter than the
Vastly
mayor. All right.
improving upon the mayor's proposal.
Not many people can say stuff like that.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Atten, seconded by Councilmember Schroeder to approve the more substantial ordinance change to the entire Section 304 as opposed to the change to 304.02 for those keeping track at home. Any discussion on the motion as the maker, Councilmember Atten?
This is well, I think I've said my piece on that, but this is a question for the attorney. Under contributions, it lists that disbursements for police, fire, and other emergency or public-related services, which shall be directed by from the fund by the action of the city council. I think we need, that kind of has to be worked out. I think that was the sentence that I didn't understand. Shall be made directly from the fund by the action. Oh, part of what I didn't understand is I looked through sections of 349 in state statute that seemed to make sense, and I saw nothing that talked about disbursement for emergency police, fire services. So I was wondering where that language came from, or if I missed it in the 349.
Councilmember Etten, I think you may have missed it.
Okay.
The language that I added and the language that's in here, the changes are all just cross references to state law to bring this language up to date with what the current
Okay.
state law says.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't find it, and I checked like 5 sections. It seemed to make sense, so I don't know what our requirements are around that. Is there a certain percentage that has to be made to emergency services from that fund, or what are the rules?
If you look down, there's a reference again to the same public safety-related services in paragraph C, which is on the next page. And so excluding amounts that are contributed to the city for those purposes, 90% of the remaining profits have to be in the city's area.
Yep.
So I think there's more of a floor on that than a cap.
Okay. But there isn't necessarily a requirement that it has to go there.
No. Currently, I don't think we have, in my time on the council, actually allocated any of those
Yeah, I don't
funds to
remember, yeah.
public safety.
Okay. Okay, all right, thank you.
And with that, actually, I apologize. I did note a couple of potential slight adjustments to the language, and probably only one of which is substantive enough to bring up. But I would just refer the council to the first page of the more extensive ordinance on line 42. It says, "No organization holding more than one permit will be required to forfeit an active premises permit if the threshold changes the count." And I guess my only concern there was, is there the potential for a situation where an organization with a single permit could be thought of as requiring to forfeit no, I guess not, because if they only have a single permit, the only time that would come in is if there's only 2 out there. Okay, never mind. I'm good then. I had to ask the question. All right, we've got the motion before us. Seconder of the motion, was there additional discussion? All right, other council discussion? Councilmember Strawn.
I do note in the state statute, the police, fire, and other emergency or public safety-related services are a part of the subdivision 1 F. So, you know.
Okay, I'll go look later.
But I do recall from last time we looked at this, that was part of the state statutes. You just had to sort of make a provision for it, and I don't believe it allowed for, like, your charitable fund to do that. It had to be a direct council approval. All right. With that, we've got the motion before us to approve the ordinance amending Chapter 304. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. I believe we have a summary for that one because it's a little more extensive. Is there a motion to authorize publishing a summary?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Graff, second by Councilmember Schroeder to authorize publishing a summary. Discussion on that motion?
No.
Hearing none, by law that requires a two-thirds majority, which in our case would be a four-fifths majority. All those in favor of authorizing the publication of a summary signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously, meeting that two-thirds requirement. And a summary will be published. Thank you again to Roseville Youth Hockey for coming, bringing this before us, and hopefully we keep pushing up against the threshold limit, and that just shows support in the community for all these worthy efforts.
On behalf of Ray Howe, we so appreciate that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
With that, then we move to our next business item this evening, which is to consider approving the 2024 Public Works Work Plan. This is our opportunity to find out about all the disruptions to our lives that will happen over the course of the summer.
You mean the improvements to our infrastructure?
Well, they go hand in hand, right? So with us this evening, we have Jennifer Lowry, our city engineer and assistant public works director. Hopefully I'm not promoting somebody unduly this evening, but I don't have a lot of authority in that regard. So welcome, and we look forward to your presentation this evening.
Thank you, Mayor, council members.
Move that mic.
Want to run over the work plan. I will start with with some accomplishments of what we've done in 2023. So we did have quite a bit of activity in developments and smaller and larger projects. We had 44 erosion control permits, for example, but that translates to over 477 inspections, so staff are busy doing that. We have updated a lot of our boilerplate agreements with our attorney and myself being new. That's been actually helpful working through those together. And we've started our lead-free Roseville survey to find out what the water services are in Roseville. Just touching on a couple different highlights. We've vacated 14 sections of right-of-way, and we've also billed over 1,500 hours to Falcon Heights for who we perform some engineering services. We resurfaced just under 6 miles of roadway and over a mile of pathways, and we added a couple segments of pathways that I'll touch on in a second. Made drainage improvements and resurfaced a parking lot. This year we also drained the water tower and repainted the inside of the water tower, replaced over 500 water meter, and repaired over 26 water main breaks. So we continue to address those as those come up. Completed our central garage, did over 847 work orders. And another highlight, we had over 33 plow events last year, which was 94 inches of snow. That's almost 8 feet of snow. So hopefully we won't get there this year. All right, in our sustainability group, we did receive the League of Minnesota Cities Sustainable City Award for our work in Partners in Energy, and we also received the Home Energy Squad Intercity Challenge Award. We're most likely in the lead for rebates per capita from 2023. Those numbers aren't finalized yet. We participated in Green Step Gold Leaf pilot program and maintained our Green Step level 5. We did participate in EV Smart Cities communities. We reached a bronze level in that as well. We had a lot of collaboration work with Ramsey County. 1 second, I lost my mouse. I'll just go for it. And that includes, we had some shared partnership meetings. There was 2 hosted meetings with neighboring cities in the county. We had monthly emails that shared a lot of information. I think there was over 45 emails, and a lot of engagement that happened through that collaborative work. In addition, we continued to have our contract with Eureka Recycling. This is the 2022 numbers brought in over 2,700 tons of recycling. They won't finalize the 2023 numbers for a couple more weeks. We did have a cleanup day with 265 visits, which was normal or lower than normal because of a thunderstorm. But even given that, it still garnered 105 mattresses. So just to get all that routed correctly through the system and recycled what we could. And shredding day brought in 10.3 tons of paper. Here's some photos of our construction projects. So the water tower painting on the left. We had some deep pipe replacement going down to Lake Johanna in the middle, and did some grading on Concordia Pond. And then on the right, you'll see from our P&P mill and overlay, Merrill Street before and afters. On the left, you'll see some of our trail project locations. So Marion Street was a new connection. We had Lexington right over here, and Cleveland north of County C. Oops. In addition, I just want to say on the right, we have Garden Avenue and Falcon Heights. So it was a full reconstruction of Garden Avenue, and that's what got us up to the 1,500 hours. So that was a nice narrowing of a roadway with bump outs. In addition, it was a lot about the people. So Public Works is fully staffed for the moment, so that's pretty exciting for us. We also had 4 interns for the summer and hosted Institute of Environmental Sustainability Corps intern in addition. We had a tour, here's our PWET Commission, taking a tour of Eureka. We engaged with over 60 people at a meeting regarding County Road B reconstruction. We got over 700 people to respond to our County Road B and Snelling intersection study. So I want to just talk through the work plan for 2024. I'll touch on all the items on the right. Each one has its own slide, and I have some talking points for each. So if you have any questions, you can stop me as we go through or save it till the end. It's fine. Our pavement management plan, the city owns over 123 miles of roadway. With the PMP this year, we will be doing both the reconstruction of County Road B, which I talked to you about recently, and about 3.9 miles of mill and overlay. So on the west end, you'll see, coordinated with our County Road B project, the Eustis, St. Croix, St. Stephen's area being milled and overlaid. And on the east end, you'll see Burke and Skillman, William and Marion. I'm not going to name them all, but on the right side, you'll see a tiny little one up kind of in the middle, just south of here, and which is Rose Place, I believe. And then there's also Rose Lawn. That will be a joint project with Falcon Heights, all mill and overlay.
Just a question there, is it, for the residents by the Midland Hills area, is it better to do all those mills and overlays at the same time as the B project, or is that too much? I mean, has that sort of thought process been analyzed one way or the other, and this is the conclusion, is to go ahead and do that?
I think there's just a lot of benefit in the pricing and the coordination to have that all done at once with one contractor. And so we'll be doing some of the work to connect in some of those side streets for storm sewer and water main. And so I think that'll be the best part, to just not hit them twice with construction. And since it'll be one contractor, then it'll be easier to work with one contractor to maintain access and to figure out the scheduling and be able to communicate that to people.
Good, okay.
So that's the idea. We'll work on it.
Wayne can still get home.
This is very important. It is a
Yeah.
conversation.
I didn't want to name names, but I
Because
know
there's
this neighborhood has been very engaged through the County Road B process, so and others.
Good intentions, but let us know.
There is only one way in and out of there.
Yes,
That's what
yes.
people get worried about.
Yep. And we're working on the specifications for that now and how to phase that and what requirements to put on the
I have
contract.
full faith in you.
Thank you. So pathways, in addition to the pathway that we'll be doing along County Road B with the reconstruction, that'll be funded through MSA and our streets funds. These ones on this slide are funded through our pathway fund itself. So we have over 85 miles of city pathways. This year we intend to construct 5 new segments of pathway, which are noted on here. So the Twin Lakes Phase 2, which we've talked about, which is just the south of Owasso Pond. We have a short connection on Lexington from Sandhurst to Sharon. And it was kind of chosen because of its proximity to the high school. We have Dale Street, which is literally between the Trunk Highway 36 ramps, and that'll be done by MnDOT. We have Wagner and Western, and also Tamarack Park. And so those are down in the lower right corner. Those ones were brought to council in October, I believe. We'll be resurfacing the trails in Owasso Hills Park, and also 2 short segments between St. Croix and Fulham over by our reconstruction segment as well. In addition, we also will be working on a bike plan this year. Just last week, we were notified that we did get a planning grant, an active transportation planning grant through the state. So we'll have a consultant on board to help us work through that. We'll have the kickoff later this month, and then I'll know more. So step 1 is to get the grant. So that was exciting. And we'll continue and finish up on the Snelling and Conroe V pedestrian study. Lighting, we want to touch on a new kind of lighting to bring this as an item before you guys this year and moving forward. We will replace the County Road B bridge lights over 35W. Thank you for catching my typo.
Yeah.
And so those have been out for a long time. We'll be replacing the lights on the east side that are over the trail. We'll also be replacing some of the lights in the City Hall parking lot. In addition, we'll be updating the lighting policy. So the lighting policy itself is just over 20 years old. So we'll be updating that to look at spacing and lighting standards and residential versus commercial, et cetera. So that will come back to you guys. Our sanitary sewer system, we have a consultant on board already to help with the design of the rehabilitation of the Dale Owasso lift station. And hopefully that will occur, the construction will happen later this year. We'll also retain a consultant to help with the design of the Cohansey station, and that would be for next year construction. We do have a lining project that we will do this year. About 50% of our 143 miles of sanitary sewer pipe have been lined, so we'll continue working on that. This year will be a smaller, like $500,000 project, and we intend to get a consultant on board to start putting together a bid package for some more complex lining to be done next year. We'll also be doing some minor upgrades with our PMP that we typically do with rebuilding some of the top of structures, etc. Water distribution. So we do have some new water main replacement going in as a part of the county's pavement project on County Road B. So our water main is from Snelling to Merrill. We also have some new upgraded, upsized water main going in on Hamlin, which is Josephine heading north into Arden Hills. Most of the cost of this project will be bore by Arden Hills because it's upsizing our pipe to provide more water to them. We'll also be doing a small segment of water main with our County Road B reconstruction project, which would be just west of Cleveland. Speaking of Arden Hills, we have our Arden Hills agreement for providing them water that expires at the end of 2024, so that will be looked at and redone this year as well. Our storm sewer system. So as a part of this year, you can see the photos on the left. We did do cleanup of City Ditch 2. And this coming year will be some project planning to determine what are the next steps with maintenance and upgrades to that ditch. Most of the storm funds this year are going towards County Road B reconstruction and stormwater improvements associated with that work. And Twin Lakes Trail Phase 2 also has a big culvert where those funds will be used. They have ongoing, we also have ongoing work to improve and expand our modeling and some of our U of M research projects that we've had for several years now. As we had on the work plan last year, we have the South McCarran's retaining wall replacement. So we did bid it last year. Bids came in very high. We've tweaked the plan set. They're going out shortly for bid. So we do intend on reconstructing most of the wall with the soil nail wall and the form liner, as you can see here. And we may not award or replace all the wall depending on the bid prices, so we broke it up this year. We've also started a retaining wall inventory around the city, so of about 145 retaining walls that we own, we've been looking at that as well to come up with more of a systematic plan to maintain those. For our environmental work, our sustainability has action planning work to do with some grant funds that we expect to get this summer. You will hear more about that as the plan develops. We intend to implement our energy action goal plans with continued outreach to households that are energy burdened more than 6% on their utility bills. Conduct more Less Mow May education and outreach. Continue with our Green Step and B3 work. Your council or your work session on January 22nd, you'll get more information on the Green to Go ordinance and talk more about that. We have an energy resource fair that is intended to go forward with some of our neighboring cities to, and also a residential EV and drive event that will show resources for residential EV, similar to the one that was hosted this year for governmental EV. We also work to, we have an environmentally preferable purchasing policy that already exists, but we're going to work to implement that and strengthen internal use of that, and also continue with our extensive education and outreach. For recycling, we'll continue to prepare for Ramsey County's curbside organics pickup rollout. So that's still anticipated for this year. Look at more educational opportunities to improve recycling in parks and roll out it further in parks. Prepare for the comprehensive recycling 2025 RFP. So that will be going out this year for the RFP. The RFP will go next year. So we'll be working on that, and that goes back to if we own our recycling bins, if we don't, kind of different variables that way, and looking for more annual cleanup day event partnerships. In addition, I just wanted to touch on, we intend to come to commission and then to council with some amendment changes. A lot, some minor, some larger, just to clean up our ordinances. So we have some ordinance amendments related to abatement and repairs and assessments related to people not performing those repairs. Our bench ordinance to clarify who and how who can place and how benches can be placed within the right of way. Some changes to our fats, oils, and grease ordinance, which is relatively new but a little stringent for some of the minor remodels that are occurring. Some street patching to make it clear that the city has first right of refusal for that work. Water meters, it's how to obtain and water meter deposits, kind of clean that up, and also some well ordinance changes. So those will all be drafted and discussed with commission before coming to you guys sometime in the next month or so, I believe. And then last but not least, I have some updates from partner agencies. So Trunk Highway 36 will have a mill and overlay from 35W into Edgerton in Little Canada. Most of that work will occur on nights and weekends. In addition, MnDOT continues to work on their Trunk Highway 36 multimodal study from 35W to English Street in Maplewood, and we anticipate the next public engagement to happen in early March. Ramsey County will be doing the reconstruction of the pavement restoration of County Road B, like I mentioned, that's in coordination with our water main project. They also have their Dale Street from 36 Tacoma Avenue, the 4-to-3 conversion. And that will also add some pedestrian crossings and refuge islands for us. There's the County Road C design, that's a 4-to-3, Lexington to 35E. That will be, I believe, a 2026 project. That is just beginning planning and design now, as is the Rice Street design from Larpenteur to County Road B. I believe that was a 2027 project. Metro Transit continues with their G-line planning and design along Rice Street. And watersheds, the one watershed that we noted has having projects in Roseville, the Capital Region Watershed District has a Trout Brook Interceptor flood modeling project and targeted watershed program, which I believe was centered mostly around rain gardens and stuff in McCarran's area. I know I ran through a whole bunch quickly, but that's the presentation, and if anyone has any questions.
All right, questions for staff on the proposed 2024 Public Works Work Plan? Councilmember Strawn.
I appreciate all of the things on there, and it's very inclusive, and I appreciate that. There was two things that I thought should, or maybe could be added at some point. One, I would love to see us exploring, especially the lease of EV chargers. We really lack sufficient chargers. You go to Target at any time of the day or night, and they are all in use. So obviously, we need more, and it would be really nice to see if they could be on some of our city places where people could charge. And then the other thing is, recently I became aware of the water efficiency rebate offered, and I think it'd be really nice if more people, obviously I want to get it first, but then that more people know about that option, because if I hadn't just gotten a new dishwasher, I don't know if I would have noted that. And so I think it's another great, especially because it comes back as a credit on your water bill. And so when people are all worried about their water bills increasing, it's a really tangible way to reduce that. So, but otherwise, lots of great stuff coming. And like Councilmember Graff, off of B and Hamlin and Snelling is going to be we're going to pray for the fire to get here.
Right, other questions for staff? Councilmember Redden.
Thanks for all of this. I noted to Mr. Freihammer that you're going to be very busy. There are a lot of different types of things here keeping you very busy. Thinking about that coordination with folks with things closed, you said that the Highway 36 work is going to mostly be nights and weekends. Do we anticipate that overlapping with the County Road B project, just because the County Road B project can be so long? At some point, we're going to lose good through traffic on those two roads on the nights or weekends sometimes. Is that
And
correct?
we'll work with both MnDOT and the county to try to, at the very least, communicate that really well. They'll still need to maintain access on County Road B to all those businesses. So I believe the intention is to have one lane of traffic each direction throughout construction, not full closure, but I'm guessing there'll probably be some pipe crossing or something that would lead to full closure, but we'll look to minimize the full closures of those as much as possible. And I think there's a fair chance of being able to do that.
It'll be exciting for a little while.
Yeah.
Yeah. When we look at our lighting policies and things like that, one of the things that is something I'd like us to consider, or I guess there are two things. One is the type of bulb we put into these lights as we start taking over more of the street lights in our city and have this policy. There's some lights that have gone in the city of St. Paul that are essentially blue. And they're highly unnatural at best, and I think we would want to think about how that affects nature, literally, but also just if your house is there, you've got this blue street light in front of your house. It's really not a very healthy thing. And then thinking about spillover of light. There's a light by Villa Park that is aimed in such a way, I think this is not under our control at the time, but it's aimed in such a way that it goes at least 100 yards into the park, into the ponds and things like that. So instead of being on the street only, it really sinks. So as we think about how that light is directed towards where it needs to be and not carrying out into homes or into natural spaces as much as possible.
And I'll just tie into that, just from anecdotal experience. I know that there was, when Excel replaced the light in front of my house, it didn't affect me as much because I'm set back and up from the direct corner, but the neighbors across the corner from me had some concerns. And actually, our public works staff was very helpful in connecting with Excel, and they changed the length of the arm and then also the way the actual fixture was directed, so that it was much less impact for that resident. So I think just to the extent we can kind of have those types of things in policy, if we need them, that would be helpful to be able to point to, especially if there are things we are going to be responsible for. So I would echo those things.
Just we're thinking about those ahead of time as we
Yeah.
create that. Thank you.
And absolutely on the color of the light. We want natural-looking light, yes. Other questions or comments from council members? Councilmember Roth?
More just a comment. I think it's an impressive year's work, and I know you will communicate well with our neighborhood there that's going to be affected, so that's the main thing.
We've created an expectation of
Yeah.
communication with
Yeah.
them, yes.
Yes.
I know you'll be communicating,
Yes.
bringing us treats.
Councilmember Shore?
I know that when we looked at those contracts with Excel, that we realized that they expired and that we had to take those over.
Yep.
How many lights did we end up taking over?
See if Jesse beats me to this.
This is where you place stump the engineer.
125 contract, or 124 contract lights. I'm not sure if those were the ones that were switching over or not.
So, Mayor and Council, we can talk a little more when we talk about the lighting policy. So the leases are expiring. We have options. We don't necessarily have to take them over. We can redo leases, or we can go to a pay-as-you-go, or we can take over the lights too. So we kind of have three options. So that's one of the reasons we want to go through the lighting policy, particularly since most of these are in commercial areas. If we follow our true lighting policy, a lot of those areas would get a lot darker. So do we want to do that? Because our policy doesn't speak to that. So that's why we'll do that, but we'll go into more detail. But we really do have options. It's not like we're 100% taking them over. We just are taking over the cost, because right now, Excel, when they expired at 25 years, the burden's on us. So we do just need to figure it out, but we potentially could defer it by re-entering into a lease or paying as you go instead of paying it all up front.
So how many would you say, guesstimate, 136 you said, or? I'm
I
just,
had 124 were contract streetlights.
okay.
I'm not sure how many of those are expiring or expired.
Yeah, we'll have data, and we'll have we did, I know last year, I think we threw a big number in the CIP.
Right, that's why I noticed that.
But so we have updated the numbers. Part of that's based on some assumptions about potentially reducing a little bit of lighting based on some recent past projects. And then also we do have some updated costs. So we'll walk through that when we certainly talk street lighting.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I had a couple of questions that kind of came up as a result of some of the information in the presentation. One is, you talked about the number of I can't remember for sure if it was water or sewer or both, line breaks that were dealt with over the course of the year. And I was just curious, do we sense, is that something that's trending up or down or fairly constant over time as we've seen those projects from year to year? Obviously, we don't plan those projects. They happen because of breaks. But, one of the things I suppose that could be an indication of the age and potential lack of preventative maintenance is if we're seeing a lot of increase in the number of breaks. And I was just curious if we've really seen any trends there, or if it's just kind of steady.
I would generally say it was generally steady, although we did have a summer water break season, but we're very confident that was more related to our water tower being offline. So otherwise, I would say it was pretty normal. And knock on wood, so far for the winter season, it's been good.
Is that related to because there's a little bit of a lack of pressure or a pressure drop, and so
Yeah,
some
we think
weaker
it's
pipes
lack
were
of
caved
frost
in?
in the ground currently.
Got it.
So honestly, it's been a really quiet 3 weeks.
All right, well, knock wood on that.
The winter, yeah.
Yeah.
Winter.
And then on the Arden Hills water supply project, I can't remember, do we provide all of the water for the City of Arden Hills through our contract with, or our purchase from St. Paul? Okay.
Yes.
So we have a bargaining chip with Arden Hills if we need to.
Should we get involved in the
Control their water.
Army ammunition plant?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm guessing that might be why they have to upsize, is because the additional housing that they're providing and commercial is part of that project. So I'm imagining that's the impetus for that.
Correct.
I'm just imagining we have a giant valve, right at the border that the mayor can go over and if we need to.
Only the mayor.
Yes. All right. And then finally, especially with the Dale Street conversion, does that make sense to maybe see if the county can have somebody come here and just kind of present what the final plan is, at least for the Roseville part, and kind of update the community and the council on that? I'm not sure that I think we've had people from the county here for the B project because that was programmed for a prior year. If they want to come and talk about that one, I guess we won't turn them away, but certainly I think the Dale Street conversion, I think there's a lot of people that are interested in that and would like to see kind of what the plans are, so that would be, if we can get them on for an agenda. Anything else from the council? Do we have anyone from the public who wishes to speak to the 2024 Public Works Work Plan in support or opposition or whatever? All right.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. Appreciate the information. And once again, the request is to approve the 2024 Public Works Work Plan. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, we'll give it to Councilmember McGrath, seconded by Councilmember Strawn, to approve that. Discussion on the motion. Any discussion as maker and seconder?
No, I think we covered it.
All right. Any other discussion on the motion? We have the motion before us to approve the 2024 Public Works Work Plan. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously, and that is approved. And I should note that there will still be steps for approval throughout the year as projects come forward. We'll have to authorize and award bids and all those sorts of things. This isn't carte blanche. All right, with that, then we have item 7C, which is to consider entering into a professional services agreement for referendum communication services for the city of Roseville in relation to our sales tax request. Turn it over to Mr. Trudgeon to introduce this item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As referenced in the case, we are looking here tonight to enter into a professional service agreement with a communication consultant to help us message about the upcoming referendum for our sales tax. As you are well aware, we did receive permission from the Minnesota legislature to go out to the voters for a referendum question to institute a local sales tax of 0.5% to help finance the construction of a new maintenance facility and license center. We're looking to have this consultant come on board to help us making sure that we are informing the public. We can't advocate, but we can inform the public. We want to make sure that there's enough awareness out there of the project and the need so people will be able to be informed when they go and vote. We did interview, talked to 3 different companies that provide these services, RAP Strategies, Golf Public, and ICS, and 2 of those firms did submit proposals. Both proposals are in the packet. RAP Strategies, for a cost of $32,000, had a pretty extensive scope of work. Would be working very closely with staff and the council and providing a lot of collateral information to help populate a website and other mailings and things like that. We were very impressed with their proposal. They also have extensive experience working on 87 different local referenda in Minnesota and Wisconsin, and successful passage of 63 of those. Most recently worked in Edina, Bloomington, Golden Valley, and Mounds View. The other business that did submit a proposal was Golf Public for a fee of $40,000. They had a little bit more broad scope of work as far as this in 3 different buckets: Phase 1, Phase 2, and Phase 3. They did have worked on several referendums in the community, but not as in the area, but not as much as RAP Strategies. So we are looking for the council to approve entering into a contract with RAP Strategies based off the information in our interviews for a cost of $32,000. That cost is not budgeted, and I am proposing that we fund that expense out of the cash reserve fund. That is something that we have a separate pot of money that we take away from other funds that have excess over our policy. We do review that annually, so I'm looking to spend that from that area of the budget over our finances. And with that, I guess, don't have much more to say beyond be happy to answer any questions you may have on this request. And once again, we're asking to enter into a professional service agreement with RAP Strategies. The professional service agreement is in attachment 3.
All right, thank you, Mr. Trudgeon. Are there questions for staff? Councilmember Bratton.
A few questions about how far their work goes and where our staff takes over. One phrase here is develop a presentation to be used for community meetings. Does that mean we would run the meeting, but they would provide a slideshow or paperwork to hand out or things like that? Is that
Yes, that's
accurate?
correct, yeah.
And then-
And they would be informational meetings, not, once again, we're trying to persuade, but informational meetings.
But we would run the meeting itself?
Yeah.
And then maybe somewhat similarly, it says create mailer to all postal customers. We would end up being in charge of paying for the actual creation and printing, and I should say the printing and mailing of that? Is
Correct,
that
yeah.
correct?
That'd be an additional cost, yeah.
Mhm.
Other questions? Councilmember Schroeder?
I assume our attorney is involved with this because I think one of the main things is, like you mentioned, Mr. City Manager, that we want to make sure that we do everything by the law, what we can and cannot do. So I imagine you would have some oversight in this?
I certainly can, and I'd be happy to. It's something I've certainly done for other cities as well, so.
Thank you.
All right, if there's not other questions from the council, we'll open it up there. If there is public comment, this is an opportunity for members of the public to speak to this item. Once again, as members of the public are coming up to speak, we'll just note the 3-minute time limit for speakers and direct questions or comments to the council. If we need to answer questions, provide follow-up, may happen this evening or as a follow-up to the meeting. Welcome.
Hi, Roger Hess, Wagner Place in Roseville, Minnesota. And my question is, when the question you ask the voters in the fall, are you asking them for permission to issue the bonds or just asking them how they want to pay for the bonds with the sales tax or with property taxes?
All right, we will be able to answer that question for you. If you
Okay.
have anything else on your mind.
Yeah. Are you really going to spend a huge amount of money to build a license center rather than just renting space? Because it seems like it's going to cost $600,000 a year at least for the license center, which is like twice what it makes for income every year. Whereas you can rent space for about $100,000 and have some profit. So hopefully you're going to think about that before you make a final decision. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hess. Check if there's anyone else from the public who wishes to speak to this. I don't believe we've actually got other members of the public here. All right, we'll close the opportunity for public comment. And just specific to the question that's on the ballot, I mean, that's very much outlined by state law as to what we can and must say in our question, as I understand it. And so that'll be what determines what the question is. And I believe we do have to have a separate question for each project. That's how we've structured it. And so that would be part of it as well. But certainly the language of the question will come right out of what state law tells us we have to say and ask. And I don't know if either the attorney or Mr. Trudgeon have anything to add beyond that at this point.
Well, I was just going to add, the question is whether or not it would be asked whether the city of Roseville can institute a local sales tax. It's not going to be an either-or situation, or do you want this or that? It's going to be, shall the city institute this local sales tax to fund
Project.
And that question isn't just drafted by me on the back of a napkin. That's gone through legal counsel and reviewed by the council too. So there would be a lot more to come on that particular question. But you are correct. It has to be very precise and specific to the request, and cannot be leading either. So I'll defer to the city attorney on all that. But yeah, it's very precise. It's not just a random question that we ask.
Right, it's very limited as to what cities can ask of voters generally. Certainly, we can ask for permission to issue bonds and debt to build a project, or we can ask for permission to institute a local sales tax for a project. We can't just sort of ask a question, should we pass a law to do this or that? I mean, those types of things cities are precluded from doing by state law. So, but anyway, once again, for this specific case of the state sales tax, or the local sales tax, we will be following what the law requires us to do, and certainly not venturing beyond that. Councilmember Strawn.
So then, just to clarify for myself and everyone else, then it will be asking permission to institute a local sales tax for the explicit permission to build the maintenance facility as previously.
Right, there will be actually, I believe,
No?
two questions, one question for each project, as I understand it. That's why
Yes,
we've
that's a
asked for it
requirement of
separately
state
from the
law.
state legislature.
Council members, if I'm trying to remember exactly what goes into the ballot question, but it's the amount of the sales tax, so what percent? The total amount that will be raised by the sales tax, because once you raise that much, you stop. And then how long the sales tax will be in effect. I know that those three elements are in every question I've ever seen. If there's two projects and they're separated, then there's a separate question for each project. So, it would be, $60 million as a half-cent sales tax. I'm making these numbers up because I don't actually know them. X million dollars over 20 years at a half-cent sales tax. It would be very specific.
Councilmember Strong.
I just wanted, I've expressed my concern before, and I continue to express concern that we have a very supportive taxpayer base, and they're generally supportive of projects that we take on, but we are giving them a very specific ask and not providing maybe a value add to something. It's not at all sexy ad to get it's not a community building. So I guess I understand where the need for, I think maybe we just need a dog, but get like the fire department. But I think it's an interesting piece because the people have had, throughout all of our conversations with the community, I don't know that it wasn't the top ask, could we please get a maintenance shed? So I think it should be interesting to see how we position this in a way that people are willing to put that kind of tax money into that over a long period of time, especially the regressive nature of a sales tax, which is concerning, of the disparate income, how it affects those who are poor disproportionately. And obviously there's all the clarifications with food and clothing, but I think it's ongoing concern that this has been decided for 4 or 5 years now, that's going to be this outcome of this, and doesn't seem like there's any going backwards. It's just we're plowing ahead whether or not people want that.
Right. Other comments, questions?
Well, to
Graf?
follow up with the attorney's comment about the funds, so once we reach the dollar amount, that tax stops. So it may be 20 years, but it may be less than that.
Correct.
Thanks.
And just to clarify further, if we don't collect enough money at the 20-year time frame, it also stops at 20 years, correct? Because that is part of it as well.
Yes.
So
Yep.
that's a piece of it. Right, we've got the request before us to authorize entering into the contract for professional services with RAP Associates, I think. So is there a motion from the council? Councilmember Schroeder.
I just want to have one more comment.
Sure.
I think if we're going down this sales tax path, I think it's really important we do it correctly. So I think it's important we have the right resources helping us do this. So that's why, we have our attorney, but I think having a firm like this makes a lot of sense. So I will be supportive of this, so anyways, that was just a
Would you like to
comment.
make a motion?
I will move
Now that you made your comment in support of a motion?
All right, well then I will move that to approve this.
I'll second.
All right, so moved by Councilmember Schroeder, seconded by Councilmember Groff to authorize entering into that a contract for professional services. Discussion of the motion. Anything else from Councilmember Schroeder as the maker of the motion? All right, as the seconder, Councilmember Groff.
Well, I think Councilmember Schroeder said that well. We need to have the right resources, and we need to be clear with the public about why we're doing this. We've discussed this for 5 years, but that doesn't mean the public understands all that. Mm-hmm. The other thing is the public have not done tours of the shed and the needs that are there for public works. The public likes to have the streets cleared of snow and all those things done, but there's a system behind that, and right now we're barely able to keep that functioning because of the facility we have. So that's the information I think that needs to get out there, and I'm hoping this firm will help us do that.
Well said.
Right. Other discussion on the motion?
I concur with what's been said.
Right. And I would just add also that one of the things we've heard from the residents over the years is the desire to have folks who don't live in Roseville but who spend money in Roseville help pay for the things that costs Roseville to do. State law prevents us from using sales tax to pay for instance, police officers, police cars. It prevents us from using sales tax dollars to pay for a lot of the things that we do, that we spend money on as a result of having a fairly robust retail community in Roseville. This is a way that rather than using property tax dollars, which is the usual means available to Roseville, to fund these needed improvements to this facility, specifically the maintenance facility and the resulting changes that need to be made with the license center, This is a way to actually use those types of funds, the funds from people who don't necessarily live here and own property, but pay sales tax and shop and contribute in other ways to the cost of running a city, to allow us to use another funding source for this, which then doesn't put so much burden on the property tax, and we can hopefully continue to use the property tax to adequately fund those other areas. And I'm trying to be careful not to stray into the using public resources for advocacy, but just more trying to explain the background of how we got to where we are in case folks are tuning in late. With that, we have the motion before us. All those in favor, and once again, this is to enter into the contract with RAP. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
That motion passes 4-1. Councilmember Strawn in opposition. That then brings us to our next item, 7D, which is to consider commission reappointments for 2024, including the process. We have our Assistant City Manager, Rebecca Olson, with us for this item this evening. And of course, my first question to Ms. Olson is, any changes since our last email as to the roster of positions we're going to be filling?
Thank you, Mayor, council members. No, as far as, no, look at my watch, but apparently I do know how to clear a room too, so. But thank you. So tonight, you are kicking off the process for reappointments and appointments to the various city commissions. As you know, each year the council appoints various residents to the different commissions that we have. And this process does include the reappointments for current commissioners that are eligible for an additional term and are seeking reappointment. So in front of you, you do have a bench handout that as of, I don't know, 6 o'clock tonight was current. And what that has is a timeline on the first page. I'll just quickly walk through that because one of the things that you will also be doing is confirming that timeline tonight. On the first page tonight, as I mentioned, January 8th, you are kicking off and will be asked to declare the vacancies for the various commissions. We will then, as staff, open the application process and begin the recruitment. This does include reaching out to previous applicants as well. And then the application period will close on February 14th. And as of right now, the interview dates were scheduled. They were part of your council calendar that you adopted, scheduled for February 21st and 22nd, depending on the number of applicants, if you need the two evenings. And then at your March 4th meeting, you will be asked to appoint the applicants to the vacancies for those commissions. I did include on here, in case anyone is paying attention watching, for the new commissioner orientation. It will be scheduled for March 27th, and we do have a tentative date for our ethics training as of April 10th. The next thing that you will see on page 2 and on page 3 are the lists of the various commissioners for each of the commissions that are either their terms are up or they are seeking reappointment or not seeking reappointment. The ones that are highlighted are the changes that came in today. So, and finally, at the bottom table on page 3 does list the vacancies. I do want to point out that the the middle column that says number of vacancies, that includes all vacancies, including those commissioners that are seeking reappointment. And then the column on the right-hand side tells you the number of commissioners that are seeking reappointment. So tonight, you are being asked to declare the number of vacancies and approve the timeline. With that, I will turn it over to council.
All right, thank you, Ms. Olson. Questions from the council on the proposed process or other information? Questions? So first of all, I suppose approving the process may be a fairly straightforward item. The second thing would be declaring the vacancies for those positions that there are vacancies. And then finally, the question of whether we want to interview any returning folks that are applying for reappointment. So maybe on the, I don't know if we need to do that as 3 separate motions, but it may help us to do it that way just to smooth the conversation, but I will defer to the council if I'm out of line on that. Thoughts from the council in terms of the process, approving the process, declaring the vacancies, and then the question of interviewing returning applicants?
I thought the process was good. That's why we don't have a lot of questions for Ms. Olson this time. I think the work we've done in the past couple of years is helping us get this more streamlined and more, the schedule might be a little difficult, but, you know, that's the way this works. We have to do it at that time of year and get it done before April 1st. So I think it's all in order.
Councilmember Strawn?
I'm very comfortable with the process. I feel like it's really laid out. This document is excellent, having it all in one space instead of 6 different documents that we have to cross-reference is excellent. I feel much stronger about the return candidates. I don't personally feel like I would need to interview all of them this time. I feel like we have a better sense of where people are headed. I guess the one thing I really would like is down the road at some point to have a conversation about how we can help strengthen and direct the work of the HRIEC, given the high turnaround, and what we can do to maybe make the expectations for people seeking that role consistent with what they're doing, because it doesn't appear that the expectations and everything are consistent. And when you can't fill the job, you redo the job description. So, I mean, I feel like maybe there's something there, but the amount of other folks interested in reappointment who've had regular occurrences and who've had really positive reviews from their chairs, I'm be fine with moving forward without re-interviewing folks at this time.
Right. And just a note, I think that's a kind of a sneak peek at our upcoming future agendas, because I believe we're going to, as part of our conversation about the changes to the commissions, which Councilmember Schroeder and Etna have been working on, I think one of the requests we had was to soon have the HRIEC in a joint discussion with the council about their requested changes.
Yep.
So I think that'll be very apt to that very
22nd.
topic. Yeah, on the 22nd.
Okay, really good.
So perfect timing.
But I mean, it really
Yeah.
begs it. It
Right.
really
Oh,
is.
exactly. When
You
you
look
see,
at
when
the
you see
data
a
and you're like,
quorum,
okay, something's
turning
up.
over, something's
Every
not
time.
right. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're right.
Right, other feedback and/or a motion at this point. Councilmember Schroeder?
I just want to make sure that we're going to have this recorded.
Yes.
Since I will not be hitting the interview dates, I want to make sure that would be available then.
Yes, correct.
Thank you.
Right. Councilmember Etten?
I want to make a motion to do this all at once, to approve the process as outlined, to declare the vacancies as outlined, and to do nothing else.
Does sound good. Okay, that's the motion?
Second, all of those things.
All right. So we've got, and just so I get it straight here, we've got a motion from Councilmember Etten, seconded by Councilmember Strawn, to approve the process and declare the vacancies.
Yep.
And take no action with regard to interviewing returning appointments.
Yes, sir.
All right, discussion on the motion, as the maker, Councilmember Etten, anything?
I have nothing else.
Okay,
Thank you.
as the seconder, Councilmember Strawn, I know you had noted something you wanted to bring up. Okay. Any other discussion on the motion? All right, hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously, and we have our process, and we've declared those vacancies. Thank you, Ms. Olson. I also want to thank Rachel Boggs for her work on this as our volunteer coordinator. She's sort of taken over this process from a staff and, behind-the-scenes point of view. I really appreciated her responsiveness, as well as actually returning Commissioner Schaffhausen. Ms. Schaffhausen had filled out the new commission application instead of the returning commission application, and I caught that on Thursday and quickly reached out, and I was really glad that they were both able to be so responsive to get the updated application in the packet, because that's, I think, more helpful to our process, and something we were looking for was to have that specific application from people who are reapplying for reappointment, and so I appreciated the turnaround on that, because it's not always able to be done that quickly. Councilmember Strawn.
I'd just also like to thank Rachel Boggs for her participation in the interview process. It's made having more than one staff person has really eased that and just seemed to kind of make it more seamless and more helpful. So I really want to acknowledge her part in that as well, because it's really been beneficial.
All right, now let the recruitment begin. All right, thank you again. That brings us then to item 7E, which is to consider approval of Roseville's 2024 legislative priorities. I'll turn it over to Mr. Trudgeon for this item.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you recall, on December 4th, our last meeting of 2023, City Council did review and discuss the legislative priorities, reviewed the 23 policies, and looked at maybe what should change, what should be removed and added. So this case tonight is in front of you as an attempt to hopefully try to bring that all together. I would note that of the 23 policies, we've retained 10, exactly as worded. We've modified 4 different policies with some slightly different languages, removed 13 policies and added 4. And I thought it'd be best just to walk through what's on the screen here. I would note that all 4 new ones I put in the high priority. That's just a placeholder. Ask the council to discuss if those are high priority items or not. So the first several ones are the existing ones about the Oval, the tap room and cocktail room, statewide licensing and massage therapists. Then the last 4 that are listed are the new ones. One is to receive authorization to utilize existing funds in TIF District 17 to assist in redevelopment and environmental remediation. And there's material in the packet with those details. The second new one would be to modify existing laws, state law regarding park dedication to allow for collection of park dedication fees on new development without the requirement of the land to be subdivided. Once again, there's a memo in the packet about that and the need to do that. Currently, state law, you can only collect park dedication through a subdivision. If there's a property that develops, let's say with multifamily, that does not subdivide, then we are not able to get park dedication. And the last 2, one would be to clarify the law regarding the use of force by school resource officers. This is an issue that the council is well aware of, and this is something that I've noticed, at least in the paper, there's a lot of interest in addressing those issues. There's a lot of conversation about it at the very least. And then the last new one would be the creation of alternative funding sources for the cable commissions, and there's some background material in the packet on that. So I've put all those in high priority. Certainly the council can discuss any changes they want there. I won't go through all these other priorities, but just note that the last, looks like that's 4 of them, 3 of them are modified, 4 of them modified. The first one is the 4th from the bottom, continued funding for Emerald Ash Borer. I think we asked before just about having funding, and we're just asking for continued funding, so let's keep that program funded. The second one is regarding participation virtually, and there's a lengthy sentence there, and it's a little wordy, but I tried to model it over what the League of Minnesota Cities is proposing, so certainly we can improve that, but actually allow for elected officials and by default commission members to participate remotely without having to open up the place they're at to the public, and not have the limitation just on health concerns. And that's limited to 3 times a year right now. So it's trying to be a little bit more expansive. The third, or second from the bottom, the third modified one is continued funding for mental health services and resources for public safety. There were some significant dollars put in this last year's budget, and we'd like to continue having that go forward. And then finally, I did change substantially the previous priority regarding ambulance service that we had asked before about a study. There is a study going on right now, so I guess that was kind of meant, but we want to be a little bit more specific and really allow local governments to designate which licensed ambulance server may provide services in their community, and also determine the appropriate level of service and response time. Right now, there is no control. We as a city have directly over that, and we're governed by state law. It's very antiquated, and as you see throughout the state, this has been a bigger and bigger problem. We've experienced it quite a lot here. So we just, I think it comes down to more local control and local say in how that's determined. That's going to require some massive law changes, and it's probably not going to happen overnight, but it's something that I think we've identified as a problem here in Roseville and something we should advocate for. So that's a real quick summary of the changes that we've made, the new ones and the modifications to the language, but I'd be happy to answer any questions and see where we go.
All right, thank you, Mr. Trudgeon. Are there questions from the council for staff on the proposed legislative agenda? Councilmember Strawn.
Thank you. I know last year on the Board of Metro Cities, we were talking a lot about the cannabis regulation and sales. Do we feel like as a city entity we have adequate information, or are we going to continue to need further clarification as this new legislative session goes in on how we are involved in that process?
Most likely, I think to be honest, will need clarification. Right now, there's nothing to react to. They passed the law, now they're trying to get the state director involved and start having these administrative rules. I'm sure as we move forward here, we're gonna have a lot more questions. I think that will probably happen naturally, that we'll be interacting on that. There's a lot of unknowns still, and we won't know until they actually start trying to institute some of the regulations.
Right. Well, I
it's-
know that we pulled it.
Yeah.
It was a regulation, and obviously that law has been passed, but I do feel like, especially in the realm of the Board of Metro Cities, we were feeling that and the SRO issues were the two that we came out of the legislative session being the most unclear about. So wondering if we want to continue to seek more guidance so we can, I would assume other cities will as well want continued guidance around the cannabis.
We could certainly add a priority that to continue to, I'm not sure how we would say it exactly, but kind of monitor and seek guidance and direction or clarity, maybe is a better way to say it, of the state law, the implementation.
And the
of
city's impact, I guess, just
Yeah.
knowing how,
It's a big unknown, for sure.
I think the only question I have there is these are priorities we have for the legislature to take action. And I'm not sure, given that the legislature has passed the law, now it's in the form of developing the regulatory scheme at the administrative side of the state government. And so I'm not sure how that fits in with legislative priorities at this point, because I don't know that there's any proposals to change the law necessarily, or that we're suggesting any proposals to change the law in regard to this during this session. Mr. Treasurer.
Just maybe on that point, so you're right, the legislation was passed, now it's up to implement. More likely than not, there's gonna have to be clarifying legislation as you try to institute. Hard to say what that exactly is. I would say, one is that we know the retail sales are gonna start to 2025. And so as we go throughout the year, as we prepare into 25, we may have some sense. And also, I would say there's nothing stopping us 3 months from now, if an issue pops up, adding something to the legislative priority with very specific requests. Fortunately, we have metro cities, we have League of Minnesota cities that are on the front lines that really are leading the way, so we would just be somewhat along for the ride, but as a voice of support for those type of things. So I would just mention that as well. In a lot of respects, I don't think that out of the gate there'll be, who knows, but there might be some legislative introductions of changing some of that law, but until we get more details, it's gonna be hard to know what works and what the impact on us is going to be directly. So maybe it's something we stay tuned and kind of monitor and add as we need to.
That's kind of what I was
I
wondering.
think that's kind of what I had in mind, not as a high priority, but just as kind of keeping it on the radar as something that we needed to address and keep, because we're likely going to need whatever clarification they provide to help guide our actions in the future.
Even if it wasn't on this list, I don't think there's any doubt that it's on our radar, for sure, just because of the situation we're in. So that's a thought there. Other things, comments, questions from council members? Councilmember Atten?
I appreciate the things you've added, and I'm comfortable with the things you've put under there. We've discussed and added, but where you've put them, and I appreciate the updates to things. I just want to keep talking about park dedication. We've been talking about this since I was in the Park and Rec Commission just a few weeks ago, and I didn't have gray hair then.
Or
Wasn't the senior member.
Or wearing
Anyway,
glasses.
and I didn't wear glasses. And
It's taken its toll on.
and
His voice
if
is really high.
if any, all of you be quiet. All right. If anything, now with a fully built-out city, that's even more important in some ways to have resources to keep up things or to add amenities or adjust things when we're dealing with a very closed circuit for what we can do. It's not like there's this open tract of land to just go buy for a modest price. It's just not there. So.
Agreed. And I did want to note on the last one under the high priorities, I'm not sure that the city of Roseville is going to take a lot of lead on
Yeah,
that
that's a
necessarily.
question, yeah.
So we might be able to drop that one down into because that's kind of the delineating factor between the upper tier stuff and the next tier is what role the city's going to take
Yeah.
in advocating. So I certainly would be comfortable moving that down. And I would just add perhaps suggest adding the word sustainable before alternative funding, because I think that's really the key. because clearly cable franchise fees are no longer going to be sustainable going forward, and so that's kind of the idea. I don't think we want to advocate for creating a new system that's just as antiquated or is going to be, in trouble in 5 years or whatever. So that's kind of the thought there, is perhaps that added word. And just to clarify, for the background materials, I saw that the information we got from the Nine North folks sort of included the state law at the top, and then it sort of had a much broader discussion about broadband franchising in the bottom. That's not necessarily part of what we're talking about here, so it's nice information, but just to clarify for anyone that might have been confused by the addition of that. I know the folks both at Nine North, as well as the attorney representing the commission, loves to always get out and advocate for some of those other things, any opportunity they have, so just to clarify that. And I'm, once again, on the SRO clarification, I don't know what role the city of Roseville will have in advocating for that. Do we want to still keep it up at the top because we anticipate that perhaps our chief or others will be involved in testimony and things like that, or where do we find ourselves on that one? Councilmember Hutton.
I would argue that that is very important. Certainly, our chief has identified this, and I trust our chief all day long and all night to keep us safe and to know what's important to really be concerned about, and I know that she's concerned about this. So I would leave it under the high priority because of that.
I agree, and I think she does a very good job when she does testify, so I think that's really important.
Very much so.
All right. Just wanted to clarify. Anything else on any of the other ones, Councilmember?
I'm wondering if in that same vein, we would consider moving the ambulance service up and with our police chief on the helm, just because he is such a strong advocate for,
Or our fire chief?
yeah, Rosny.
That too.
That guy.
Yeah.
The dog really threw me now.
Are we, what do we feel our role is going to be in that process?
Yeah, I don't know.
Mr. Treasurer?
Well, certainly to maybe testify in support of changes. Don't think we're proposed to have any specific legislation introduced on our behalf. I think we would continue to connect with the Chiefs Association and other interested parties in looking at the changes. I think, as I mentioned, the first step is the study that's going on, so that needs to conclude, and then there might be something would happen. How much will be taken up in the session, it's hard to say.
Right. Do we want to move it up or keep it where it is, or Councilmember Schroeder, thoughts?
I'd keep it where it is. And then I had one item I had a question on.
Okay.
Should I go ahead? I'm
Yes.
curious about the statewide licensing of massage therapists. It says existing. Could you give me a little background on what Roseville does to work on that?
Yeah, so we do, people that want to practice massage therapy. In the
I mean, I
state.
know why we want to
Yeah,
do it,
right.
but what is Roseville doing to try it? I mean,
To advocate.
because
Oh.
you advocate, this is
Right.
under our high priorities.
right.
What are we doing to advocate for?
Well, one, with all the priorities, especially the high priorities, we advocate directly to our representatives, our senators and senators, and talk about why this is important so that they know, and certainly try to get them to introduce bills of that. I would note that Senator Uma Verburten did introduce legislation last year that would seem to accomplish what we were looking for. It was a broader bill than that. Did not go too far in last session, but so that's something, for instance, we would support and come and testify if needed to be. So we try to work with our local legislators to introduce legislation. Some of those high priority ones are very specific to Roseville, so it's a very straightforward to introduce a bill. I would, this is maybe similar to hotel licensing in some respects. We're the ones that drove that. We're the ones that got it passed for the whole state.
Exactly.
There's probably more interested groups for massage therapy. I've seen even, I think Metro Cities might have a policy on it. That could have been because of our involvement, I can't remember, or League of Minnesota Cities as well. So this is an issue that's a little bit beyond, but certainly we could be in the leader's seat for that, and we would work with the senator to
Okay.
get that moving.
And
forward.
nobody else is really taking the lead on that one.
As far as I know. Yeah.
Okay. All right, that makes sense.
I was just gonna say, there's a pipeline grant through the state of Minnesota that helps train people in needed careers, and they were looking at proposing a massage therapy course, and I reached out and said, well, it's not a license. through the state. So you need to be working on having a license. If you're gonna train people to be a thing, you need to have a standard by which they are being that thing. And the person reached out and said, oh, I didn't know. So I think there's an opportunity for, just like, oh, okay, because usually they train nursing assistants and other things that have a state licensure. And so I think there's just a lack of understanding, and so I appreciate how much we've worked on it, but I was able to do a little enlightening of someone at the Department of Education who had no idea that there wasn't actually a licensure track on the massage therapist at the moment.
And that is in the, I don't think there's any proposal to move that out of our high priority, but a clarification
That
as
was
to what
just a
our-
clarification, yes.
So potentially, one change from what's presented is to move the alternative sustainable funding for cable commissions down. Is that agreeable? All right. I did want to bring one topic up that just came up actually today in the mayor and city manager meeting that we have with some of our neighboring communities, and that is potentially support for photo enforcement of traffic. Because currently, because I believe of a ruling of the Minnesota Supreme Court, in the state of Minnesota, you can't do photo enforcement. And as I understand, there's the potential that if there's changes to legislation, potentially we could. And just wondering if we want to think about, and we don't have to add it tonight, because I think we may want to think about it some more, but that was a topic that, given all the issues we have with traffic enforcement in our community and the frustration people have with speeding and red light running, specifically those two things, which are often photo enforced, that we may want to think about, if not on this list tonight, but at some point considering advocacy. There's going to be a whole lot of legislative work that'll have to be done to make it something we can do in Minnesota and hopefully not be declared unconstitutional by the state Supreme Court. But that being said, it seems to be something that people in the community are very concerned about, that safety aspect, and seems to be something that can deal with it in a way that doesn't take up a lot of, personnel resources. And so just wanted to, because the topic was brought up by somebody else at this discussion, and we were having this conversation this evening, I did want to just put the subject out there for thought by the council. Certainly, once again, not saying we need to put it on our list this evening. So just taking that opportunity. Otherwise, we've got the list with potentially that amendment on the Cable Commission that could be acted on. Councilmember Schroeder.
I thought I heard right before I came in tonight that Minneapolis was doing a pilot study on that with the cameras. And they were looking at, and they knew there were some things that had to change, but they were.
I believe it was a Minneapolis case that is
Yes,
what determined, because
yes.
they had implemented the photo enforcement and
So
actually.
they're actually trying to
were
figure,
sued.
so there seems like other cities are looking at that as well, so.
I think we heard that Minneapolis was the city that was primarily pushing for this, but I'd have to believe that, potentially St. Paul would get on board, just given
Right.
the issues don't stop at the border of Minneapolis, and St. Paul's a pretty big community. So more to come on that, but
Right.
yeah, wanted
So
to get it
what I'm
out
saying
there.
is I think it's a bigger,
Mhm.
not just for Roseville.
Oh,
but
certainly it
yes,
wouldn't be,
yes.
if we put it on the list, it wouldn't be one that we'd put at the top
Right,
unless we
right.
really planned to
Yeah,
to
exactly.
take a leading role, which, we could, but
Okay.
not there yet. Councilmember Etten.
I'm going to move our existing list of priorities as outlined in the packet, while changing it slightly to move the creation of sustainable alternative funding for cable commissions to our other priorities list.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Etten, seconded by Councilmember Groff to approve with that noted amendment. This would be our list of 2024 legislative priorities once again. Discussion on the motion. Councilmember Etten as the maker of the motion.
I think I've said enough, thanks.
All right, Councilmember Groff as the seconder.
I think it's a good list, and as Mr. Trudgeon said, if things change during the legislation session, we can always revisit.
All right, any other discussion on the motion? All right, thank you for a good discussion this evening, as always. And we've got the motion before us. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously, and those priorities are approved. That brings us to designation of city council liaisons for various groups and committees. And we've got the list in our packet of those items. And I don't know, Mr. Trudgeon, is that something we can get up on the screen?
Mayor, is 7F. is
Oh,
what
I
you-
apologize. You're right. It was hidden by all of my notes on motions. I apologize. Item 7F, appoint acting mayor for 2024. Obviously, this is something that doesn't impact me, so that's why I just glossed right over it. But that being said, we do need, by state law, at our first meeting of the year, to designate our acting mayor, who will act in the absence of the mayor. I don't know if we have discussion or thoughts, but Councilmember Schroeder?
I would bring forth our senior member Etten as acting mayor.
I'm going to say no, and I'll tell you why. Our normal policy is to not have the acting mayor be someone who is eligible to run for office or running for office.
Oh, I didn't know
So,
that.
It's kind of unwritten.
it's kind of an unwritten policy, yeah.
Very.
So given that,
Okay.
I think I will nominate Member Groff.
Second.
All right, so it's been moved by Councilmember Etten, seconded by Councilmember Strawn to nominate Councilmember Groff to be acting mayor. Checking in with Councilmember Groff
This
to make
is a
sure.
very demanding role because I've done it before. and
I've done it 3 times and done one thing out of 3.
So yes, I will accept.
All right, that's good to know, because that makes the motion a lot easier to deal with, although I guess we can just move it and force you into it.
You could vote on it.
That's right. It's one of those kinds of motions. With that, we've got the motion before us to designate Councilmember Groff as the acting mayor for 2024. If there's no further discussion,
I would just like to say that I think he would do a great job representing the city, and he's the second oldest, I mean, oldest member.
Second senior.
Senior.
Definitely the oldest.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure one is better than the other
I don't either.
necessarily, because they both sound kind of,
All right.
I think it's sound, very good. Yep.
he's definitely the second most sound. I'm not sure who the first most sound is, but I know who it isn't. With that, we've got the motion before us. Oh, the only other thing I would add is that it does help, I think, with your schedule flexibility, Councilmember Groff, as opposed to, I know Councilmember Etten always had issues and trouble with, especially a lot of the daytime commitments, because of, his work and need to be there for the students. And so a lot of people, the work schedule doesn't work. So appreciate your flexibility and ability to do that. With that, once again, we do have the motion before us. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I-
Opposed? That passes unanimously, and Councilmember Groff is appointed. Thank you for that, and thank you for correcting me on what was next on the agenda. That brings us now to 7G, which is to designate liaisons, and maybe I'll turn it over to Mr. Trudgeon for this item, and my request stands to see if we can put it up on the screen.
I can do that. I think if you give me a second. I'm just gonna pull up case. It's gonna be easier to talk with that in front of us. I'm going to open that up so we can see who's been. So we have several other agencies that city council members serve, or groups or organizations that members of the council serve. So the first one is the Roseville board member for NYFS, Northeast Youth and Family Services, is currently Councilmember Groff, and I believe Councilmember Groff is the chair.
I am the chair through, into July this year. so
Replace him.
Might be good if I stayed there.
Then we have North Suburban Communications Commission, or NSSC, or NSAC, board member. Currently Mayor Rowe is serving, and I think you're long-standing.
Aren't you
Service
also the
on-
chair?
I am not. No, I've been successfully able to avoid being the chair for a few years now.
Yeah. And then we have Councilmember Groff as the alternate, but, so that's also up. I don't, you want to stop at each one and go through, or you want me to?
Why don't we just kind of summarize what they are, and then we can go back and.
The Ramsey County League of Local Governments, the Roseville representative, this is an organization of all local governments, including school districts in Ramsey County, that meets once a month for a session and a speaker. Councilmember Schroeder has been serving as the representative of Roseville this year. The Roseville Fire Relief Association Board of Trustees has ex officio members. Under state law, the fire chief is already appointed. And then we have to appoint other members, and traditionally it's been the mayor and the city manager, and we've both been doing that for a long time. Visit Roseville is the board that oversees the promotion of Roseville through the lodging tax. Councilmember Groff has served on that for the past few years. It looks like your term may have ended in August 23, according to this
Did
document.
it really? That's interesting.
But I
They
know
may
it-
have put me up again.
but I know it doesn't sync exactly with our appointment process here, but you've served on that in 2023. Then we have the Rice Larpenteur Alliance Executive Committee. Mayor Rowe serves on that. And the Neighborhood and Livability and Events Committee. Councilmember Etten sits on that. I thought we had a few more. Or did we shrink
I
that.
mean, liaison things or
Well, like
people
the-
on the Rice and Larpen
On Rice
boards?
Leopard, like there's a transportation and planning.
But we don't have a representative on every one of them,
Yeah.
and
No.
sometimes it's actually a staff member if it is.
Oh,
and
Okay.
so Not appointed by the council.
We don't, yeah.
Yeah, so I think what we're looking at is who the council appoints
Okay.
for that. And so there's other boards, I think there should be another document in here that shows that. But then the two ones that you really have a say in is the city manager performance review. Currently, Councilmember Atten and Schroeder on that. And then kind of the council representative for legislative work, Councilmember Strong has been serving that role for the last several years. So, and maybe we don't have the other ones, but there is Metro Cities, which you serve on, various policy committees. Mayor, I think you serve on the Met Council.
Yeah, yeah, the LUAC and the Met Council,
Yeah.
and then there's another board that I'm on, but
But that's a little bit independent
it's
of the
not
council.
appointed by the council.
Appointed by the
Right,
council,
Right.
so.
And Councilmember Groff is on Arts Roseville, if not the King of
Correct.
Arts Roseville, I'm not sure.
King?
I'm
the-
going to be off as June 30th, so.
So that's the rundown of the different commissions and organizations we are asking for liaisons for.
All right, thank you, Mr. Trudgeon. And just to get, my computer is not moving quickly. There we go. And the list is up there. So we can kind of just go through them. Councilmember Groff, you're not termed off this year on, and actually serving on NYFS, right? But it is a 3-year term.
And I'll be finished, I think, at the end of the year maybe, but I should stay on through this year since I'm
Well,
chair.
certainly, and then
Yes.
their terms are mid-year to mid-year, right? Because that's
Yeah.
their fiscal year time.
Right,
So we may have to revisit this
we
in
may have to,
June?
yeah.
Okay.
Should I nominate him to retain that position then?
We may be able to do it, we've got the resolution, which
Okay.
lists them all, and we can just fill them in.
Okay.
So that may be the way to do it. Once we get through it, we can just kind of check with everyone. North Suburban Communications Commission, I'm happy to defer to anybody who wants to take that over. It's, it's a very important organization in terms of community media and support of the community in that regard, so.
I'd like a question, if I could.
Sure.
Can we have general conversation, because it's hard to do.
Oh, absolutely.
I know, Robin, once you'd mentioned you'd be interested in Visit Roseville
I did?
early on.
No.
Are you or are you not?
Oh, I had, no,
Maybe not at an official
Okay.
meeting.
Okay,
no, I hadn't at this point.
Okay.
Yeah, but thank you for asking.
yeah.
Apparently, right now, we don't have a representative, if his term ended
Well, I
in
was just thinking
August of
that someone
'23.
could, do that. It is an
Mhm.
interesting organization, but, there are limited hours in the day, so.
I know, that's
a
part of it.
lunchtime meeting.
It's a lunchtime meeting, and it's like, is it every month, or is it every other month?
Yeah, it's a little bit less than that now.
Yeah.
It's every other month.
Yeah. I mean, I can stay on there if no one wants to do it.
Next year probably better for me.
Okay.
Because this year's a little
Sure.
tough, but yeah.
And just to fill in that topic, on the Cable Commission, it is 6 meetings a year, roughly every other month. I think
And their evening
they
meetings,
skip,
aren't
and they are evenings, 7
Yeah.
PM, the third Thursday of the month typically.
I can do that one if no one else is interested in it,
Which one?
the Suburban Communications Commission.
I'm just trying to think.
The mayor just breathed a sigh of relief
Well,
after
you know,
a decade on that commission.
I think the only question I have is I did, now that I think about it,
did
sign
say-
up
Okay.
to be on the executive committee
Oh.
as an ex officio member, so I probably need to stay on for
Probably
at
should
least
stay
one
on
more
there.
year.
Okay, let's leave that.
Sorry about that,
No worries.
but it's a standing opportunity, put it that way. Yeah, that would be pretty surprising for them if they just appointed me as
Yeah,
their,
that would be-
one of their executive board members, and then Ramsey County Legal Local Governments, and this is specifically, obviously, all of us can attend.
Right.
And should attend as many of those monthly meetings as possible, because they're very informative and opportunities to do connections with other things that are going on in other communities. But certainly the representative who goes to the board meetings and helps to plan the future of the organization and all that. Councilmember Schroeder, I imagine it's been worthwhile and you've
Yeah,
been able to do it?
I'd be willing to stay on.
Okay.
Well, and it's good to have, you reporting back, even though we should all be going there. We can't always make every one of these meetings, so it's kind of good to share the information.
And on the fire relief, I believe the only requirement is that at least one of these has to be a council member, and the other one can be a staff member, but they could be 2 council members, as I seem to remember the statute, but
That's not on this list here for some.
Fire Relief Association is the fourth one down.
Yeah, I think we looked at that
Or
last
is-
year.
It's not
Are
on
you looking at the
No,
resolution?
Maybe I'm looking at
That's-
the resolution.
resolution.
Oh, maybe the
yeah.
resolution doesn't have it?
Yeah,
No.
and this resolution's got some of that Rice Larpenter, right? We were having some confusion, we were swapping them out, but I
Ah,
guess
okay.
got the wrong
We
one.
do need to make sure we add the representative to the Fire Relief, regardless of whether we make a change.
Oh, you know what?
Let's see it up here. For
It's a separate section here.
Oh, it's on the now therefore be
Yeah,
resolved.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
on the bottom. Okay, got it.
There's
So, I don't know,
just one
we need to
elected.
make any changes to that one? To the Fire Relief representation, right? That is also 6 meetings a year,
Mhm.
5 PM on Tuesday, second Tuesday of the month, typically.
That would work so well.
Ah, all right. Visit Roseville. As was noted, we apparently potentially don't currently have a representative, yeah, although Councilmember
I'm
Graff
still
has
going
been
and I'm still
attending.
voting.
Yeah,
I'm getting, I'm wondering what I was.
When are those meetings?
They are at noon on, do you remember which day? It's a
Well-
Wednesday, isn't it?
Yeah, it's usually a Wednesday.
That's the
At noon.
3rd,
Yeah, yeah.
and they
From
from
12 to
1:30.
1:30.
Yeah.
Would you like to be?
Well, I can stay on there.
I don't know if they have term limits. I can't remember if there were term limits in the bylaws.
Sure, yeah.
Uh,
I'll talk to Julie a little
Might
bit,
be worth-
because I think that, like I said, that they don't sync well with our appointment process.
They're also a mid-year,
Yeah.
August kind of thing.
Gruff it is.
So we appoint Councilmember Graff pending clarification
Yes,
of
pending
whether
clarification.
that can actually happen. All right, and then on Rice Larpenter, actually, I think I don't even think the Neighborhood Livability and Events Committee really necessarily exists in that form anymore.
They've adjusted the structure of the
Yeah,
group.
That's
they've
right.
kind of melded everything into one overall committee,
Mhm.
and then an executive committee of that, and I think I'm on the executive committee,
Mhm.
which is kind of what's listed here, so, and I don't necessarily need to keep in that role, although I'm happy to do it. I know they do look to those of us who are sort of founding members as, I don't know, special in some way, but
Your
that's.
tie is special
That's
tonight.
it's not, I don't know that it's critical, but once again, I'm happy to fill that role. And they've gone to 6 meetings a year now also, instead of 12 or whatever it was, so that's doable. That is also a lunchtime meeting typically,
I'm writing down row.
okay? And then the next one I think is just gone.
This is gone?
Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
take those out. then.
Position is gone. Councilmember Ratten is still here. We have the standing subcommittees then, the city manager performance review. Anyone desirous of making a change there, or folks cool with what they've been doing so far?
We're cool. I found my notes from when I started a previous iteration of that committee. It wasn't you.
Wow, that goes back a
I
ways.
just found those. I recycled them, don't worry.
Don't
So no,
worry.
no change then unless,
No, I think they did an excellent job last year, and I would recommend it.
and more than happy that somebody else is doing that. job,
Yes.
right? Yeah, gotta have it. Council representative for legislative work, Councilmember Strawn has that.
I have more
Good.
flexibility to
Yep.
work on that
Okay.
this year, if
Alright.
no one else is interested.
Okay.
And then my appointment with the Board of Metro Cities goes through September, I think, of this year. So I'll continue to be on that, and it seems like they kind of meld well.
And I think you have an opportunity for reappointment on that one, as I recall, too.
Yeah.
It's not a one-and-done kind of thing.
No, no,
Yep.
people
Okay.
are on it forever.
And it brings good information back to us.
Oh, for sure. Yep.
Does we need, we have a note for an alternate for the cable commission. Do we need to do that? Because we have Councilmember Graff listed as alternate.
We can either keep it that way, or we can
Yep.
change it.
That's not a
Right.
requirement, right?
They just updated those bylaws, but I can't remember for sure. It seemed like something might have been mentioned in either the bylaws or the joint powers agreement about having one. Granted, I don't know that we've always had one, so.
No, I just mentioned it because it sounds like it's the same group of people in each position, but we didn't talk about the alternate. If we're gonna have SSC.
Well, I'm fine being the alternate. It was a really heavy tax.
Yes, no doubt, yes. All right. In that case, are we making any changes?
Don't think so.
Well, some things are dropped out, obviously. that you mentioned.
Yeah, we'll clean up that
Okay.
resolution.
Oh, yeah, for the Rice and Larpenter thing.
No, we aren't making any changes.
All right. There's nothing wrong with that.
Motion to keep things exactly the same.
Second,
All right.
do nothing.
I think those are two different things.
Oh.
Motion by Councilmember Strawn, seconded by Councilmember Redden to continue the appointments as they were in 2023, with the noted change to the Rice and Larpenteur.
And adopt the resolution as part of
And adopt the resolution as part of it.
Okay, oh, yes.
Maker and
I meant
seconder
to
cool
say
with-
all of those things.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
All right, we've got the motion before us. Any discussion? All right, hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? That passes unanimously. Those liaison appointments are updated. That then brings us to consider the City Council and Advisory Commission Rules of Procedure. Mr. Trudgeon.
Yes, so each year we do look at our rules of procedure just to make sure if there's anything we need to change that covers the city council meetings as well as commissions. And I can pull them up here in a second, but I would note two things beyond anything else the council would want to talk about. One is in regards to, I think it's began with the planning commission talking about the ability to bring forward agenda items and what that process would be. And so this is an opportunity to talk about how to do that, if that's, it was an interest in wording. The mayor does have some suggested language, which is a bench handout. To approach that, there's probably several ways to approach that, so that's one consideration. The second one, I'm not quite sure if it falls under the rules of procedure, is, as you know, we've suspended public participation at our council meetings by Zoom, virtually. And wondering if we should address that one way or another in the rules of procedure. We don't necessarily need to, but I thought this would be a good time to check in. We're not using Zoom for this meeting as well, but as we head into 24, we should probably have a conversation about that. I would say that there might be a right to have a distinction. Obviously, under state law, any of you can participate via Zoom as long as there's a medical reason. The same would be for commissioners. There also might be some advantage for having staff and/or consultants present virtually in situations where it needs to happen. Whether or not you want public, I think you could argue both sides having more ability for interaction is good, but also you may run into problems like we ran into late last year. So once again, I'm not sure if it should be in the rules of procedure, but I thought at the very least we should have a conversation. Certainly the issue about how to bring future agenda items up for commissions, if the council wants to define a process, should be in this rule. So I'll just tee that up like that and let the council have discussions on where they want to go with it. And I don't know if the mayor wants to talk about his proposed language as well. But
All right, thank you, Mr. Trudgeon. And just to clarify, this is possible language. I don't want to too strongly say that it's something I'm advocating for. I was trying to address the request that was made by the members of the Planning Commission to be able to bring forward agenda items. And I think the council kind of thought, well, maybe you do, but I think we may want to clarify that in the rules of procedure because the rules of procedure generally apply to both commission and council. So this is one way to do it, and it gives some flexibility to the commissions to decide if they even need to deal with this and how they want to deal with it. And obviously, it could be worded 1,000 different ways, and a lot of this could be stricken out or whatever, but it was one way to look at it. Some thought is that perhaps we need to be consistent between the council and commission, that the same procedure should be used for both. That's an option too, and certainly there's a way we could do that by basically sliding the order of business and agenda items rule up into the one that covers both council and commissions with some wording tweaks. So I think either of those are legitimate. We could do nothing and make no change and just say, yeah, you can do that if you want to, I guess. That's without putting it in the rules. So that's related to the commissions and new agenda items. And I do agree with with Mr. Trudgeon that it may make some sense to address remote participation in our rules of procedure. That's kind of a new issue that has come up obviously since probably the last time we adopted any changes to the rules. And at a minimum, I would say certainly staff and presenters would be allowed to do it, and we can talk more amongst ourselves as to what we want to do with regard to the members of the public. So that's all I have for now. Thoughts from the council?
I like the idea of adding it in since the Planning Commission brought that forward, and there was some lack of clarity to them. I mean, of course, we could just say, yeah, you can do it, but having it in writing, then 10 years down the road, if someone else asks the question, it's there. As far as the Zoom meetings, I don't know, it's, having had that experience with that one, we'd have to put some guardrails in place to really be careful not to have that happen again.
Councilmember Schroeder?
Actually, Mayor, I like the way you wrote this. I think it's a nice way to put it in there, and it gives them the option versus, mandatory, you must do this kind of thing. So I do like the way it's written, and I agree with Commissioner, or Council Member Groff that, if we say yes, and then who's going to remember that 10 years down the line that we actually said yes? Who's going to go back 10 years and meetings and look it up? So I do like it putting in there. And the Zoom, I think we need to have, before we do anything here or anywhere else, I think we're going to have to put that on the agenda or something for discussion, because I think there's all kinds of things to consider with that, the guardrails and I think also if we're, what the state rules are and making sure, that sounds like we're going to try to push for some more of that. So that could be changing too. So I don't know if tonight I'm ready to put something in the rules on that.
And certainly what we could do is request that the rules come back with language related to the remote participation. We don't have to adopt any new rules tonight, because certainly the existing rules remain in effect until we change them.
Sure.
So, we can either do a partial, make one change tonight and defer the other change to potentially to another meeting, or however we want to do that. So, appreciate the insight. Councilmember Bratton, any thoughts?
He's thinking.
Were you prepared? I just was looking at glasses. Sorry.
I better put my glasses on so I know what I'm doing, or what? Back in my day. We put agenda items on, if you were, say, on the Park and Rec Commission, by having two members agree with an item at a future agenda time, or you send something in offline to your liaison. And I feel like that worked pretty well and is simpler for the average commission,
Simpler than
what we do.
what the council does.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so there's part of me that kind of says, let's not make it too complicated.
I think
Which is an argument in favor of one or the other of the approaches that have been sort of proposed this evening, or in favor of something else?
I might look at yours, but change the second to last sentence. Now I do need my glasses.
That we all do.
You keep that last sentence, they may choose to go up that level if they feel like they need that procedure. But during that a future agenda review, the commissioners may propose, may discuss and approve, that, if two members agree to add something, then it is added.
Do you think 2 members is enough?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would just say that this has not been a problem.
where you do find it a possible problem is the planning commission. Because when I was on that, they felt it was very structured, and they felt it was, by statute. And so that's the only commission I'm thinking of that would appreciate this direction.
Do you think,
It says, or you don't have to do it this way, though.
do you think when you say that it would be best for the planning commission, because of its statutorial role, to have a procedure as we have, and that more formal process? Is that what you're hearing, what I'm hearing you say? Because we could put that in our update of 201, we could put that in there.
Yeah.
Because of the unique role that they have, we could put it in that they follow the city council procedure. I'm just not sure it's necessary everywhere, but you bring up a point
See, but I
about
don't
its
think
unique
having
role.
2 is enough on that one. I think you do need a majority vote on that.
Well, that's what that would
this is.
require then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Essentially, that's what
why I
this
think
is.
this is better.
Yeah.
So
Councilmember Strong.
clarifying, does this, if they bring it forward and does it bring it to the level of 8? Or does it actually put it on an agenda?
So the way the bench handout is worded is that at a commission meeting, under the review of the future agendas, which it would then be something that, you know, perhaps the liaison would initiate through discussing, here's what's coming up at future meetings. And then a commissioner could say, I would like to discuss topic X. And right now, the way it's set up is that, very broadly, the commissioners, or the commission, excuse me, may discuss and approve the inclusion of agenda items for future meetings, or that agenda item for the future meeting. So I think, without saying it, what it is would be a majority of the council would have to, or the majority of the commission
Yeah.
would have to be in favor of it.
So they would have to decide right then and there at that future. So I'm just wondering if it should follow our process where somebody brings it up and it comes back
The next meeting.
to the next meeting where it's discussed in, like in number 8, where it's
Right. Future
a
initiative.
future
Commission
council
initiative,
item.
yeah.
I was wondering about that, and just now that you brought it up, I was thinking one of the ways to deal with that in here potentially is to say something to the effect of, you know, which may include deferring the matter to a future discussion. Because I could see something coming up that could involve, you know, 2 hours of discussion, if you really want to do it justice, even to decide whether you're going to do more on it.
Right, and do you want to do
Where,
that 2
so,
minutes
you know,
before adjournment?
Right. So there could be something added to say that one of the possible outcomes of that could be to defer that discussion to a future meeting.
Or just have it the way we have it.
At that point, you might as well just have it the way we have
Yeah,
it.
make it simpler.
You just require them all to do
Yeah.
the same thing that council
Yeah.
does.
Yeah.
I think it's overkill for most commissions, but
I agree, but I think we might as well make it consistent.
Yeah,
It's
I
easier.
think consistent would be good.
okay.
So you want the council procedure for all commissions?
Yeah.
So anytime a future, so between meetings, certainly a commissioner can suggest to their liaison an item for a future agenda, or at a given meeting, a commissioner can suggest an item for a future agenda. It would then be put on a section 8 of the next meeting's agenda for discussion by the commission as to how to deal with that then. Okay.
I think
And
that's best.
and we can do that, and that's why we're having this conversation. And Mr. Trudgeon and I had a pre-meeting conversation about how potentially to do that, because that was brought up as a possible way to move forward. And I think the way to do that would be to take that section of the council-specific rules, move it up into the council and commission section,
Yeah,
and then change references to council and commission, or council or commissioner, whatever would be
Right.
appropriate. And then if we want, on the list of agenda items, if we want to designate items as relative to both the commission and the council, and others council only, you just would asterisk certain ones as, you know,
Sure.
council only or whatever. And that would be a way to not have 2 separate rules, but rather have a combined rule that kind of does it all. If that's the way, and then we would have to bring that back, because we're not going to write that this evening.
okay.
Yep.
All right? Sounds like we've got a plan there. Appreciate the back and forth on that. And then as to the remote presentation, there was a suggestion that we have a more extensive, remote participation. There was a discussion about, or a suggestion to have a more substantial discussion by the council at a future meeting on that. Does that make sense as the way we go forward, or do we want to suggest that staff draft something to bring back to us as a rule, or something else?
I mean, I'd be curious to know what other cities are doing
Yeah.
at this point, because we're 3 years plus out from COVID. Like, I'd really like to know what other cities are doing. The thing is, if we're providing Zoom as an option for remote participants, it's going to be up and running. Right now, you know, City Manager Trudgeon isn't having to deal with that. I'm sure it's nice, you know, he can send us notes back and forth, but, I think, you know, it feels like it's hard to say yes and, so maybe it's a part of, I guess I'm just curious to know how other folks are doing it now that we've kind of,
We need more information.
yeah,
But
but
you're
if we
talking about
are offering.
presentations.
Well, I think there's 2 things.
Yeah.
There's certainly there is staff and
Yeah.
presenter participation from, remotely. Obviously, they're not
That would be on the
restricted by
agenda.
state law.
Right,
So they can participate remotely all they want. There may be other employment restrictions on that, but that's a whole other topic. On the staff side, presenters, if they're from
80
other
hours a year.
organizations, you know, if it makes it more convenient for them to participate that way, that option may
well,
want
and
to be
if the
provided.
if the option is there for us to participate remotely, then really needs to have that system in place on a regular basis.
Right, well, we certainly have the Zoom technology is there. It can be just essentially
Still
turned
the
on or
license,
turned
yeah.
off at each meeting, as I understand it from 9 North and from Mr. Trudgeon. So the question just becomes, do we need to have a rule related to who can participate remotely and whether that includes people in the public? How does the council, I mean, we honestly, over the last year, have had very few people participating remotely, other
Yeah.
than
Yep.
the meeting. You know, even when we've had fairly controversial issues and, you know, the development on County Road B and the west side of the city, most people came in person. So, I don't know, maybe we don't need to have an opportunity for.
Tierney, have you had any direction or any thing that you've seen inkling direction that people are taking on this?
From what I've heard, even nationally, a lot of councils are moving away from Zoom non-scheduled testimony. Is that a good way to put it? One option that I think some cities began with during the pandemic and are reconsidering whether they're going there or not. I've just heard conversation about it, which is if you want to testify by Zoom, you can do that, but you require a pre-registration. So you know who's coming, you know who that is, and they've registered beforehand. And so you have less of the concern about the
We registered.
unknown or surprise testimony.
Well, I mean, it wasn't a tremendously rigorous pre-registration. They just basically said, I want to participate, and we
Yeah, it was
said
it was
yes.
fairly automated, you know, let's fill out a form, and we didn't vet anybody to talk to them before the meeting, what do you want to talk about? We don't do that, so.
Did we have contact or information or know who they were?
I presume so, they signed up with some type of email address, they got the information.
but not like a
That can be-
verification of
yeah,
address
No,
or anything.
yeah, no, you can make anything up.
Right, right.
Like
So
a
I don't know
person who
that,
continues to.
I don't know that we want to do that going forward, because that seems to have some holes in it, as was
Yeah.
demonstrated.
Yeah.
Well,
Mr. Trudgeon?
we don't have to do anything if
Right.
the council is comfortable. The council's last direction is not to Zoom public participation. We can
And that's-
always use it for if a council member is sick or wants to participate remotely, we were set up to do that. If staff or consultants need to use it, we have that ability to do that. So, you know, we just don't even have to do anything if we don't want to. And we're not required to provide Zoom participation for anybody, to be honest.
Well, and we should be clear, too, I think at the conclusion of the meeting, it was sort of a non-official action. Certainly, it wasn't a vote taken or a motion by the city council. I think it was more of an administrative decision
True.
that the council tended to concur with subsequently, individually and offline. So having this discussion this evening is probably an important way to close the loop on that,
Sure.
and make sure that the council is officially looped into the conversation. So,
We probably also didn't vote to start Zoom meetings. We just said, oh my gosh, we're in a pandemic, we need Zoom meetings.
I'm not sure what we did there.
Some emergency order from some mayor or something.
Yeah, some mayor.
The mayor.
Mr. Mayor, I think city attorney's got something to add.
Ms. Tierney?
Just one just point to make, and I'm not sure that it necessarily needs to be in your procedural rules or anything like that, but in the event that you did have an individual who had an interest in something before you, that for any protected reason, such as a disability, wasn't able to come, you would need to allow that by Zoom, because obviously that is something that's possible. Like I said, I don't think it necessarily needs to be in your policy, but just so that you're all aware, that would certainly be an accommodation that would be expected if someone was entitled to be accommodated.
It may make sense to put something in our rules of procedure to cover those instances and perhaps set in place, sort of an outline, if not a specific procedure of what will be required of somebody to sign up to do that. Because I think we would want to say, that person will be required to provide some sort of confirmation of, we don't necessarily, well, I was going to say, we don't necessarily limit public comment of people who attend the meeting to people who are Roseville residents. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Mayor, I think it would be limited to individuals who have a ripe issue before you. Well, in my mind, it's the quasi-judicial decisions that you're making, a decision on a licensing action, a decision on a land use application, those kinds of things where it's specifically related to a particular individual or a particular property.
Okay.
Those are the situations where I think you'd really be hard pressed to deny remote attendance if someone was unable to be
Okay,
here.
so then, once again, we're getting to council as permitted by state statute, staff and city presenters, and people with cases before the council that
Commissioners.
that are able to have, or are eligible for the accommodation. And perhaps a rule draft could be developed for our consideration on the 22nd.
Council and commissioners per state law?
Well, yes, exactly, council and commissioners per state, and, right, council and commissioners at commission meetings,
Yep.
because certainly, I
Can we
think commissioners
ask,
would have to come here to participate in joint meetings.
Attorney Tierney, can we ask of them what their business is?
Well, I think if we're limiting it to people who have a case before the city, the demonstration or the connection, the nexus is,
They do
they're
need
the
to.
applicant. They're the person who's requesting the liquor license. They're the person who wants to just subdivide their property. And we're not talking about the neighbor who doesn't want them to do that. We're talking about the person who has got the application before us.
Or both?
Mayor, council members, I think this is one of those situations we're not going to be able to identify every single situation where a person I'm just going to be the lawyer for a second and say it depends. So,
Well, ultimately, whatever we draft will have to work and fit in the depends. Doesn't sound-
You could have an ADA situation too, where
Let these two work on it.
Yeah, that's what, I just
We
want to
spent
provide
some time
direction as
offline.
clear as we could
Yes.
to
Fitting in.
those who are going to be working on it. So
Yeah.
I think we've got
That'll
some
be a
direction.
yes, no
I
vote.
sense an interest of saying something, but what we say is
Right,
open for conversation.
right.
Yep.
All right.
Okay.
Anything else on rules of procedure? This item will be coming back then with those changes proposed, probably on the 22nd, I would guess. All right, that brings us then to consideration of city council minutes. We've got the council minutes from December 4th, and in sort of reverse order, November 27th. For our consideration, council's had an opportunity to review those, and changes, suggestions were made, provided to us for consideration this evening. Are there any further changes or adjustments or corrections that need to be made, or a motion to approve one or both of those minutes?
I move to approve both.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Schroeder, seconded by Councilmember Redden to approve both sets of minutes from November 27th and December 4th, 2023. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving those minutes signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? That passes unanimously. Those minutes are approved. Future agenda items, the consent items first. Still out of practice here. Mr. Trudgeon, would you give us information on the consent items this evening?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 10A approves payments in the amount of $3,152,235.49. Item 10B approves a temporary liquor license for Bent Distillery and St. Rose of Lima Catholic Church, a temporary gambling permit also for St. Rose of Lima Catholic Church, and massage therapy establishment license for Woodhouse Spa at Rosedale. Item 10C approves the purchase of 2 police department vehicles and a trailer for Public Works. Item 10D approves U.S. Bank and BMO Harris Bank as the city's official bank depository for city funds and designates the finance director with the authority to make the electronic fund transfers. Item 10E designates the Pioneer Press as the city's official newspaper. 10F approves the annual sign permits for 2024 for a variety of city-led and sponsored events. Item 10G approves the Community Development's codes coordinator, building official to act as the assistant weed inspector to help out the mayor in his local weed inspector role for the city. Item 10H authorizes staff to seek donations to help defray costs for city-hosted events for the community. A listing of the events where donations will be asked for is contained in the RCA. Item 10I adopts a resolution approving the reapportionment of assessments for 2024. Agenda item 10J approves entering into an amended agreement with Metro INET to reflect a 3% cost increase in 24 and 25 for Metro INET to contract with the city for financial services and the use of City Hall space. Item 10K approves the annual contract with Northeast Youth and Family Services for its work in the Roseville community in the amount of $85,044. In addition, this action also approves an additional contract with NYFS for community advocate services that will work directly with the Roseville Police Department in the amount of $23,446. Whoops. Item 10L approves entering into the First Amendment to the agreement with the state of Minnesota for the critical, screen went blank for a second. Critical Quarters Grant Agreement for County Road B and Snelling Avenue Traffic Study. The amendment will allow the study to be completed by June 30th, 2024, instead of the original date of December 31st, 2023. Item 10M approves entering into an agreement with Metropolitan Council to receive a 2024 private property inflow and infiltration grant in the amount of $40,000. Item 10N approves entering into a collective bargaining agreement with the Roseville Police Officers, LALS, Local 112, for the years of 24 and 25. And that is the consent agenda.
All right, thank you, Mr. Trudgeon. And there was some weird things with the screen where when you were talking about the first half of the list, the second half was on the screen, and now anyway, so, but the information is available for the public and the council, in other
Sorry
forms.
about that.
All right, with that, we've got the request to approve those items. Is there a motion on the consent items?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Strawn, second by Councilmember Ratten. Any discussion on the consent items?
I just wanted to add that Juneteenth is not part of the list of city functions, and I clarified with City Manager Trudgeon that that is a city-sponsored event, but, and not having Juneteenth on that list does not preclude their ability to accept donations. So just in case someone read the list and wondered why it was omitted, it is funded in a different way.
And the approval tonight is to approve the ability for the city to solicit donations, as I understand it. And so it sounds like with that event, it's not something where the city is taking an active role in that. Okay,
But just in case there's clarification and reviewing all the city events that it was omitted, so
got it. Okay,
if someone thought that.
got it. All right. Any other discussion on the consent agenda this evening? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Those items are approved. Now, the future agenda review, Mr. Trudgeon.
All right, so our next meeting is January 22nd. We'll have a very short EDA meeting, just one business item to elect officers, and that'll just take a few minutes. And then the rest of the meeting, we'll try to keep it as much of a work session as we can. We do want to recognize Hugh and Julie Thibodeau for their donation that allowed us to get Ashes, the fire department support dog. Ashes will be making an appearance here at 5:30 before the meeting if you want to come a little bit earlier. Certainly it'll be presented during the meeting, but if you want a little personal time, feel free to come early. We'll have the
It is a
joint-
support dog, right?
It is a support dog for all of us,
Needed
yes.
some support,
yes.
right.
We'll have the members of the HRIC here specifically to talk about their scope, duties, and functions. So they'll talk about that. It was mentioned tonight earlier by Jennifer, Green to Go container presentation, that whole initiative, as well as discussions about stormwater projects and some policies around that. And then we also want to discuss the fire engine purchase. As you know, this came up before, electric or diesel. We're bringing this forward now because we have to start making decisions to order something, whether it's a diesel or electric, soon to get into the queue here. So we want to bring forward, the Finance Commission has looked at it their last meeting, and we'll be looking at it again tomorrow night with recommendations. And I think we all know the outlines. The electric is much more expensive and kind of an early adopter, but there's some more conversation to have on that. So we would like to bring that forward for conversation.
All right. Anything on the 29th or the
There's a
12th?
question by,
Mayor.
Oh, Mr. Etten.
Can I ask a question about that last one? Obviously, we can change our budget anytime we want, but our tax levy is set.
so
And the difference in price is quite significant. Is the idea that some part of that would be punted to a different year if we were to make a decision to do an electric engine, or?
So what we would be doing is be making the decision to purchase. It won't actually be paid till 2025.
Okay.
So it would not affect this year's budget. We have been able to lock in the 23 prices through the end of January if we decide to go electric. If not, we'll just go the diesel route, but we need to put that order in. It would not be paid until 2025.
I understand now. Thank you.
And there are some savings over the long run.
And that would all be part of what the analysis.
Yep,
We'd
yeah,
be
we'll
getting back
bring it
from we referred this to the Finance Commission for
Yep,
review. So
okay.
that's the purpose of the discussion on the 22nd.
Then on the 29th, we have a liquor license for an on-sale premises permit for the space that was formerly D'Amico's and Sons.
Oh,
For a new restaurant. The streetlight policy we discussed, we have 7 violations of alcohol and tobacco. I think mostly are alcohol. They're coming back again, or some new ones. I don't know what the list is at this point, but they're coming back. We want to review the budget process more generally, just about how we go through the review process and how we present the information and all those things. So just kind of a high-level conversation, might be the first of several conversations. There's a zoning text amendment that was approved by the Planning Commission. It was requested by Troy's Auto, but it talks about zoning districts and allowing us auto repair as a conditional use in certain zoning districts. And then we have short-term rental renewals for a couple properties that would probably be on the consent agenda. On the 12th, right now, we just have the ski slalom course on Lake Owasso. We have the Housing Trust Fund ordinance adoption and the approval of the short-term rental ordinance that we've talked about a couple times. That's what we have for now. We will also potentially have a potential closed session on January 29th regarding the Westwood Village Home Improvement, Housing Improvement Area, HIA, that was created in 2009. We'll send a lot more information about that before we get to the meeting, because it's new to most of you, and it's an issue that's been lingering for years.
All right. Look forward to that.
Yeah.
With tongue in cheek. Any questions on the future agenda or items council members might request for future discussion? Any liaison reports, announcements?
Everybody's off.
All right. With that, we only have one more item of business. I will just note that at this time this evening, the University of Michigan is ahead 17-3. And this is the first time I checked throughout the meeting. So I've been very good. With that, we have no other business. A motion to adjourn would be in order.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Graff, second by Councilmember Etten. No discussion on a motion to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. We are adjourned at 8:21 PM. Thank you, everyone.